It begins with a small boy gripping a stick and yelling that he is a wizard. He runs around with a friend, and the girl plays along by acting like a magical beast meant to be beaten. With his fake staff raised, the boy gathers himself for a big strike, then swings without thinking and smacks her on the head for real. The girl reacts fast, upset that it actually hurt. The boy treats it like part of the game, acting like wizards are supposed to hit beasts. That pushes the girl to demand a turn as a wizard too, but he shuts her down. Nearby, an old man stands back and watches the whole thing. Not long after, the elder, Labus, remarks that the kids are overflowing with energy that morning. The two children rush over and ask what it takes to become wizards, but Labus makes it clear it doesn't work like that. He explains that true mages sit at the top of human society, holding power passed down through bloodlines, and they keep control through those inherited gifts. Because of that, he says the children won't simply become mages by wanting it. A young man nearby challenges that claim. He brings up a rumor he heard, and Labus studies him with interest. The young man asks if it's true a magical beast has shown up in the area. Labus confirms it with a grim look, and fear spreads through the villagers. He describes what was found at the village entrance, a massive leopard-like creature wrapped in shadow. A woman quickly steadies her frightened daughter, saying the village chief already went to the city to bring back a mage. That calms the crowd. People start believing the beast will be dealt with soon. The mother still warns her child to stay out of the forest until it's safe. Labus backs that up, warning everyone that facing a beast without a mage is close to impossible. The same young man asks if the whole village has heard the news, and Labus says they have. Then the young man asks about a certain boy, but Labus doesn't seem to recognize who he means. The young man clarifies that he's talking about the boy from Hisaril Hill. The scene shifts to a shepherd named Turan stretched out in the grass, staring up with a bored, empty look while his sheep linger nearby. He sinks into the same complaint he's had for too long. Life feels dead and pointless. Every day shows him the same view, the same path, the same work, repeating until it all blurs together. He thinks that if it keeps going like this, he might even forget how to talk. A sharp voice suddenly snaps him out of it, calling him a pitiful kid. Labus has come again, irritated that Turan is already wasting time. Turan fires back by complaining that the old man's shadow is ruining his rest. Labus calls him disrespectful and asks if he's still bitter about what happened before. That old wound is still there. Turan recalls how Labus tried to take his flock after Turan's mother died. Since then, Turan hasn't felt any urge to be kind or share what was left to him with the village. He pushes Labus to stop circling and say what he came for. Labus bristles at the boy's nerve, but Turan doesn't flinch. He holds Labus's stare with a hard, steady look, refusing to back down. The elder drops the warning in full, and the young man jolts upright in surprise. Labus lays it out as a leopard as big as a house, and he claims he came straight there to warn him. What throws Labus off is how the shepherd shows almost no fear. He can't read where that calm comes from, but he still tells him to watch himself. Labus insists he came because he was worried. The shepherd calls that a lie. He throws it back in the old man's face, saying the worry is for the sheep, not for him. Labus snaps at that, anger flashing hard. The shepherd cuts him off and tells him to leave if he has nothing else to say. He even throws a crude insult, saying the old man's breath is so foul it could rot a nose. Labus storms off, boiling with rage. The shepherd stays put, calmly rubbing one of his sheep as if nothing happened. Once he's alone, the shepherd lets his thoughts drift back to the beast. Magical beasts are explained as the animal side of what mages are, creatures that can use mana the same way humans with power do. The idea of a real mage coming to the village sparks something in him. He feels a rush, imagining what it would be like to see one up close for the first time. At the same time, he assumes the mage won't be anything special, since the call came from a poor, remote village. Still, curiosity bites at him. He wonders how strong that mage will be. Then a strange smell slides into the air and pulls his attention hard. His body reacts before his mind fully catches up. The scent feels wrong, sharp enough to raise his pulse. He recognizes it fast. He looks up at the sky and takes it in like a warning that hits his blood. As dusk settles, he makes a choice and follows that scent into the forest to find out what happened. He moves along the dirt path with care, tracking the trail through the trees. Each step confirms he's going the right way. The smell thickens as he pushes deeper, heavier with every breath, until it starts to feel like it's clinging to the inside of his mouth. Then he stops cold. Ahead, he finds Labus and other villagers sprawled out, torn up by a brutal attack. The shepherd's stomach drops. He never expected the source of that smell to be Labus himself. He scans the damage and sees it clearly. No normal wild animal could do this. The wounds, the force, the destruction all point to one thing. This was the work of a magical beast, not some common predator. A strange sound cuts through the quiet. The shepherd tightens instantly, fully alert. From the darkness, a massive paw slides forward, claws long and sharp, moving slow like it knows it owns the place. A huge black creature steps out next, its shape heavy and wrong, its presence crushing the air around it. The magical beast reveals itself completely, standing in front of the young shepherd. Right then, the story jumps back to the little boy from earlier, now asking how strong those beasts really are. His father explains that a normal adult wouldn't last against one, not even for a moment. The boy grows uneasy and asks what will happen to the village. His father keeps him steady, saying the chief already went to bring a mage back to deal with it. That answer doesn't ease the boy completely. He asks, tense and afraid, if a mage can actually beat the monster. The father confirms it, describing mages as rare people born with magic, the kind who can drop a magical beast with a single word. The scene snaps back to the forest. The shepherd faces the creature without a flicker of fear. He speaks one short command, telling it to fall. Something unseen slams into the beast. It jerks like it got hit by an invisible force, confused by what just happened to its body. At the same time, the young man's body starts to glow, a thick red aura rolling off him like heat. He rubs at his head, realizing his first idea didn't land the way he expected. The beast takes the opening, roaring and rushing him with raw fury. The shepherd doesn't panic. He throws another command, telling the giant thing to stop. In the blink of an eye, a strange power slices through the monster, cutting it clean as if the air itself turned into a blade. That shocks him. He realizes he can't fully control the strike, even if he wants to. Still, the beast refuses to go down. Its body flares with light and knits itself back together, healing right in front of him like the damage never happened. With another violent roar, it proves it's nowhere near finished. It charges again, forcing the shepherd to retreat to avoid getting crushed. His first approach has failed, so he switches tactics without wasting time. He bends down, grabs a small stone, and locks it into his palm like it matters more than a weapon. He tightens his grip and readies his slingshot, deciding to fight like a shepherd should. The monster barrels in for another hit. The young man pours magic into the stone and orders it to become tougher. He starts spinning the slingshot, building speed. His eyes light up with a sharp golden glow as his focus narrows to a single point. He pushes again, commanding the stone to become faster, and he spins harder until the strap hums with force. He plants his feet, braces his whole body, and loads the throw with everything he has. Then he gives the last order, telling the stone to pierce its target. The stone launches like a bullet, blazing with blue energy. It cuts through the air in a straight line and hits the monster in the head before it can even react. A thick red mist bursts out into the trees. The stone doesn't slow down. It punches straight through and keeps flying, vanishing past the body like the beast was made of paper. With its head pierced, the massive creature collapses, finally dead. The moment rewinds slightly, showing the beast still throwing itself forward for a final rush. The shepherd already has his aim set, calm and sure, ready for the counter. The stone flies again toward the fallen giant, straight at the head. It strikes clean, does heavy damage, passes through without effort and continues on its path. The young man doesn't move as the dead weight drops behind him. He notes that this was the first time he used that power on a magical beast. He looks at the corpse and weighs what to do with it, considering tossing it off a cliff just to be rid of it. Annoyance rises in him as he complains that, in the end, he still ended up doing the villagers a favor. Then the truth shows through in a tight focus on his eye. He isn't just a shepherd. He's a mage. A memory takes over, and he explains that he first found his ability 8 years ago. When he was 10, he used his power to make objects float around the house. He got excited and tried to call his mother over, eager to show her firewood lifting into the air. But when she appeared, her face was hard and serious, and she wasn't pleased at all by what she saw. He also told her he could make fire and wind, and that memory stayed sharp in his mind. His mother snapped at him to stop, furious in a way he had never seen before. It was the only time she ever truly lashed out, and it left him stunned. Turan didn't understand why she reacted like that while she picked up the floating firewood and forced herself to stay steady. Then she lowered herself in front of him, close enough that he couldn't ignore the weight in her eyes. She said they needed to talk. She asked if he wanted to stay with her for a long time. He agreed without hesitation, and she made him promise to never use that power again. She also banned him from showing it in front of anyone else. Turan pushed back, confused, asking why. She brought up the stories she had told him before about nobles and knights. Turan later remembered every word of it. She explained that nobles were the bloodline of lords who once saved humanity, and knights were born from that line. She even praised him for remembering her stories so well. She made it clear that nobles and knights were treated differently from everyone else, even among mages. Then she dropped the reason behind her fear. His power came from his father, a knight. After that, she warned him to never let anyone discover he was a mage. With a small, forced smile, she asked him to promise he would keep it hidden. Back in the present, the shepherd notes that 8 years have passed, and the promise still stands. He stares out the window and decides again that it will never be broken. He has no interest in exposing his power to anyone, and no plan to leave the mountain or give up his isolated life. Then a harsh noise breaks the quiet outside. Someone starts pounding on his door, yelling his name, ordering him to come out. Turan opens the door to see what the problem is. A group of villagers stands there, glaring with raw anger. He yawns and asks what they want. One of them throws an accusation at him, blaming him for Labas's death. Another grabs his clothes hard and calls him a shameless brat. The shouting grows louder, uglier, as a man claims Turan used the old man as bait to lure the monster in. Turan stays calm even with that grip twisting his shirt. He reads the situation fast. They aren't here for truth. They're here because they need someone to pin it on. Blaming him is the easiest path for people who spent the crisis hiding. He cuts through them with that thought, seeing their fear and weakness for what it is. They want to dump the responsibility before anyone turns the finger back on them. That pushes one man over the edge. He surges forward with hate and swings at Turan. Turan slips aside without effort, the punch cutting only air. As he moves, one thought runs clean and cold through his mind. Magic is useful for dealing with nuisances. He answers with a sharp, clean strike of his own, dropping the attacker with skill that makes it clear he isn't an easy target. In the middle of it, another thought rises, heavy with memory and certainty. When someone wants something hard enough, it can become real, paid for with mana. With a hard look, Turan murmurs a simple order, telling the attacker to fall. The man stumbles like his body betrayed him and drops face first into the grass, confused and humiliated. Even surrounded, Turan walks forward at an even pace. The others swing at him but nothing lands. They flail and miss while he keeps moving, steady and untouched. He keeps his movements controlled, trying to stay low-key so his hidden power doesn't draw the wrong kind of attention. Instead of flashing anything strange, he grabs a wooden stick and uses it like a simple tool, cracking down on anyone who gets too close. He moves fast and clean, taking control of the brawl with sharp footwork and hard hits. Another villager drops after a quick strike, then another. He keeps beating back the rude neighbors who had the nerve to storm onto his land. Then it gets worse for them. In the middle of their swings, the handles of their tools snap in midair right after clashing with him. The whole group ends up dumped onto the grass, sprawled out and groaning. Turan watches them from above and thinks about how long he has lived like this, 8 years of keeping his secret buried. He looks at the defeated men and makes it clear he has spent all that time hiding what he really is. He tells them to stop wasting energy on this and use it to prepare Labas's funeral instead. A group of women shows up next. Turan asks if they came to fight too, but they shut that down right away. One of them says they only wanted to see him. That leaves him quiet for a moment. Then he tells them to drag the idiots away and steps back inside, shutting the door on the mess. Alone again, he thinks about how going to the village will be a headache. They'll try to turn this into bargaining, twisting the situation to squeeze something out of him. He doesn't care. If they try anything, he can just beat them down again. He figures the beating was rough enough that they won't come back soon. A knock hits the door. For a second he assumes they really have lost their minds. But the sound is different, heavy, steady, confident. Whoever is outside isn't there to whine or threaten. Turan yanks the door open, already angry, ready to hurt someone. A stranger stands there. A bearded man in travel-worn clothes, calm eyes and a sword at his side. The man apologizes and asks to stay for a while because he's traveling. That word sticks in Turan's head. Traveling. It feels distant, like something from a world he never touches. The stranger apologizes again, saying he just dealt with unpleasant people. Turan thinks of his mother teaching him manners, and how he never uses that polite voice with villagers. The whole thing feels strange. He studies the sword and finds it odd to see a swordsman in a place like this. After a quiet breath, he lets the man in. The next moment shows a table covered with food. Turan has invited him to eat. He offers what he has, nothing fancy, but the traveler still looks surprised, first by the meal and then by the fact Turan has never seen an outsider before. Turan explains he was born there and raised there and he has never left the hill. The swordsman drinks from a wooden mug while watching him closely. Turan drinks too, calm and measured like he's trying to pretend this is normal. Then the visitor comments on Turan's posture and manners. For someone who has lived as a shepherd, his behavior is too polished. Turan credits his mother, then mentions she died a few years ago. The traveler responds with respect, saying she raised a fine young man and is resting somewhere good now. Turan accepts it and says he only lives the way she taught him. After that, Turan asks what brought a swordsman so far out. The man reveals he came because of a request. A leopard-type magical beast appeared in the area, and someone needed to kill it. Turan immediately understands. This is the mage the village chief went to find. The stranger confirms it without hesitation. The mage asks to question him. Turan allows it. The mage says he can sense the beast's aura nearby, yet the creature is nowhere in sight. On top of that, Turan's attitude doesn't match the situation at all. The village chief warned him about danger, but Turan sits there completely calm. The mage points out the obvious. If the beast attacked humans, Turan would be the first one hit. Then the mage locks eyes with him and presses the point, asking why he isn't afraid. That question drags Turan back into an old memory. His mother's voice returns, asking what he really was. Young Turan had asked why he couldn't tell anyone he was a mage. His mother had answered with a comparison he never forgot. Knights were like the dogs shepherds raised to guard the flock. They could be treated like family, but the moment it became necessary, they could be sold off or sacrificed without warning. She told him she didn't want that future for her son. She wanted him to stay with her, live quietly and stay safe. She made him promise he would never forget that warning. If another mage discovered the truth, they would be torn apart and he would be turned into a weapon. To keep his identity hidden, she warned that he might one day be forced to silence someone forever. Back in the present, Turan feels it like a cold weight in his chest. The moment his mother feared has finally reached him. The visitor pushes the question again. Turan's eyes flare with a golden glow. The swordsman goes quiet, watching him carefully, trying to read what that reaction means. Then the mage suddenly smiles and says Turan's expression ruined the joke. Turan doesn't get it and wonders what kind of joke that was supposed to be. He admits he doesn't really understand humor. The mage waves it off, saying the surprise makes sense since it's Turan's first time hearing a mage joke. The visitor realizes they never even introduced themselves. He reaches out his hand with an easy smile, expecting a handshake. Turan gives his name as Turan, an 18-year-old shepherd, and shakes his hand. It's the first real greeting between them since the man arrived. The mage mentions he is 75. Turan reacts that he doesn't look that old. The mage explains that mages age slowly. Turan asks how someone like him ended up wandering around. The mage says he served House Arabian for 60 years and now wants to travel during what he calls his final days. Turan finds it strange but also kind of appealing, like it belongs in some story he never got to live. The mage seems pleased by that reaction and leans into it, ready to share more. Turan listens with real interest. The older man smiles wide, and the room turns warm in a way Turan isn't used to. They keep talking and Turan realizes he's enjoying it more than he thought possible. He never expected a conversation like this to feel so easy. Hours slip away. When they finally notice, dawn is close outside. The mage is surprised the night vanished so fast and says it's time to go. He leaves silver coins on the table and explains they're the purest kind. Turan accepts them and wishes him luck with the hunt. The mage tells him not to act like it's goodbye, then jokes that he might come back someday just to get another free meal. The next day, Turan takes his sheep to graze on the hill like always. The flock spreads out across the grass under clear sun, calm and steady. With a small smile, Turan gives a call for the flock to gather. One sheep lifts its head right away, then the rest follow, moving toward him until they form a tight group around their owner in the center of the pasture. Turan thinks about last night. It was the first time he had met another mage and he can't even remember the last time he talked that much. While he rubs a sheep's head, he remembers the calmness in the old man's voice and the simple joy behind it. Out of all the adults he has dealt with, that mage felt genuinely decent. Alone with the flock, Turan reflects on how he always pictured knights as hunting dogs for nobles. Useful, loyal, disposable. He wonders how the hunt went, since there are no longer any magical beasts left on Oral Hill. At the same time, the mage moves through the forest and confirms something is wrong. There really are no beasts nearby. The silence doesn't feel natural. He finds signs of a battle, but he can't sense even a trace of the creature's aura. He stares at a damaged tree and starts to suspect the beast was already killed by someone else. He wonders who could have done it, and whether the chief called another mage besides him. Even so, he feels relief. The beast being dead is what matters. Then that relief shatters. A strange feeling crawls up his spine. His expression hardens as he senses a vicious presence coming closer. He spins around, reacting on instinct. From the shadows, a gigantic paw slides forward, claws huge and warped. The creature steps out and it's wrong. It looks like the same beast that attacked the village, but rotten, twisted, decaying, something dragged back from death and forced to move. The mage understands immediately. It's a corpse puppet, a marionette made from the monster's body. Shock hits him hard. He can't imagine who would do something that vile. The corpse puppet lunges, trying to crush him with a shadowy claw. The mage dodges fast, and the strike slams into the ground hard enough to tear out a crater. He recognizes the problem. This is what happens when mana isn't properly absorbed. No competent mage should leave a corpse like this. He launches upward and fires a heavy blast of energy into the puppet. He is now certain a mage killed the original beast, but he can't understand why they left it behind like this. He dismisses the idea that some rookie knight did it, because someone inexperienced wouldn't be able to bring down a monster like that. As he shapes a fireball, another thought takes hold. Whoever did this wasn't just hunting. They had another purpose. No matter what, the mage decides this has to end. He steels himself and prepares to throw everything he has into the fight. He unleashes a heavy blast of power at the shadowy creature, expecting it to rip the corpse puppet apart. Instead, the magic fades out, swallowed and erased like it never existed. Shock hits him hard. The mage realizes the monster's mana is stronger than his own. Then the creature vanishes into the trees, leaving him staring into empty space. He understands it's setting up a counterattack and starts searching the forest, trying to catch any sign of movement. That's when the enemy's shadow slips in behind him without a sound. The corpse puppet erupts out of the darkness and lashes him with a spiked tail. He has no time to move. The blow lands clean and brutal, tearing him up and leaving his arm badly injured. The force hurls him away. He slams into the ground and rolls through the grass, stunned by how fast everything turned against him. Flat on the forest floor, he can't believe a monster like this is even here. As the creature closes in, he wonders if this is where he dies. Still, he forces a determined smile. He refuses to quit. If he's going down, he plans to drag the thing with him. He gathers every bit of mana he can into one hand, building it for a last strike. The corpse puppet moves in, ready to finish him. The mage holds his focus and waits for the exact moment he can release everything at once. Then he launches himself forward, flying toward the monster for a desperate counter. A small blue light appears deep in the forest. In the next instant, a sharp streak of blue cuts through the air and slams into the creature right before it can deliver the killing blow. The hit comes from a direction the mage never expected. The impact smashes the corpse puppet into the ground and leaves it still in the middle of the woods. The old man stares, confused and stunned. Then he hears a voice he recognizes, checking if he's still alive after the chaos. He looks up and sees the one who saved him, the young shepherd. Turan stands there calm, almost quiet, like the fear never touched him. He walks down the path at an even pace as the tension in the air slowly drains away. The mage's eyes widen as the truth finally locks into place. Turan isn't just some shepherd. He's a mage and not a weak one. The old swordsman presses him, questioning why he hid it the whole time they were talking in that house. He also demands to know why Turan came back at all, since he could have disappeared and never looked back. Turan gives a small, controlled smile and starts to explain his reason in a plain, direct way. The scene shifts into a memory. A dog lies on the wooden floor in Turan's home, resting near their feet while the two sit at the table and talk late into the night. Turan points out that with the visitor's skill, he could make far more money somewhere else. He questions why the old man looks at villagers like them with so much pity. The veteran answers with a tired sigh, explaining that people like these live cut off from everything, with no real protection against how brutal the world can be. Hearing that, Turan reflects on how mages carry power that comes from the gods, and that power drags them toward a path they can't fully escape. The old man smiles and says he's proud to protect helpless commoners, but admits not every mage feels the same. Turan takes that in. He shows he understands and a satisfied look crosses his face. He recognizes that in a world this big, everyone has their own way of thinking and their own way of living. Back in the present, the final clash ends with a violent shockwave that sweeps through the forest, sealing the victory and wiping out the remaining threat. Still running through the trees, the wounded mage warns that they need to flee, because that creature was on an entirely different level. He says only a noble could bring something like that down and tells the young man to warn the village chief. The swordsman stays behind, ready to face the monster alone and buy time for the escape. Even as he braces himself, he admits he was talking tough and has no idea how long he can actually last. Turan cuts in and shuts that down. He tells him to stop worrying because it's already under control. If the last strike worked, then they're fine. A stone nearby starts to glow, answering his confidence with proof. That stuns the swordsman. He realizes Turan wasn't even close to using his full strength. The veteran knight, Korn, understands it wasn't some random meeting at all. Then more stones lift off the ground, floating in the air with intense blue energy. Turan finally lets his power show, and it becomes obvious he isn't some helpless runaway or a minor talent hiding in the hills. Turan smiles and admits he wanted to test his own limits too. With rocks hovering around him like a halo of weapons, he steps forward to face the massive shadowy creature head-on, calm and certain. Korn tries to shut it down, warning that the enemy is too strong. He insists they should fight together. But the monster doesn't wait. It charges straight at Turan. Turan answers first. A thick beam of blue power tears through the air. Korn can barely follow it. He realizes he would only slow Turan down now. So he lowers his glowing hand and stops forcing himself into the front line. His role changes on the spot. If he can't win this fight himself, then he can at least make sure Turan survives it and grows from it. Then Turan releases a crushing wave of mana that rips through part of the forest. Trees and ground suffer under the blast. Even after that, Turan clicks his tongue in irritation because it didn't do what he expected. He tries to finish with a kick, but his leg passes through the creature like it's smoke. No damage. No resistance. Korn shouts the truth into the chaos. A phantom can't be hurt by physical hits. Turan keeps his eyes on the advancing shape and asks how he's supposed to kill something like that. Korn tells him to use fire. He adds that lightning can work too. Turan extends his hand and flame slams into the monster, but it still doesn't look affected. Turan complains that it isn't working. Korn tells him he's missing the point. To affect a living thing with power, there has to be a cause. It isn't just throwing energy. It's building the right chain that lets the force stick. Then Korn freezes as understanding hits him all at once. Turan never absorbed the beast's mana. That mistake is what allowed it to become a phantom. The old mage is shaken by what he's seeing. Turan is already this strong without real training, without proper technique, without the basics drilled into him. Korn yells for him to create fire and then launch it properly at the creature. Making fire is simple. Controlling it is what takes years. Turan does it instantly. No hesitation. No struggle. He forms it like it's natural, like he's been doing it forever. Then he stomps down hard, grounding himself, loading his body for a clean strike. With one sharp motion, he sends a fireball flying with full force toward the shadowy monster. The fireball slams into the creature's eye with perfect aim, triggering a violent blast that floods the air with flames. The phantom's body starts to burn away, its shadowy form breaking apart as the fire eats through it. Korn shouts for Turan to stay locked in and keep feeding mana into the flames. If anything remains, the phantom can persist. Turan hardens his focus and forces more power into the burning mass, refusing to let it escape. The heat surges. A swirling storm of fire finishes the job, and the creature is erased completely. With the threat gone, Korn finally lets himself breathe and celebrates. He points out how absurdly strong that phantom was, high-level and dangerous, yet the young shepherd still brought it down on his own. Turan asks if it's truly over. Korn looks at him with fresh respect, impressed by what he just witnessed. Then Korn gives a warning. If Turan doesn't absorb the mana left behind, he risks facing another phantom. Turan asks how to do it. Korn tells him to picture it like draining something out. Turan closes his eyes and concentrates. Green energy begins to seep from the remains and stream toward his hand. The mana pours into him in a steady flow and he pulls it in completely. His eyes flare with the same green color as the energy entering his body. The mana spreads through him, and for the first time his inner pathways become visible, like channels lighting up under the skin. Korn freezes, stunned by the sight. He says the sensation will be overwhelming. Turan can barely process how intense it feels. Korn asks if this is his first time absorbing mana. Turan confirms it. Korn explains that mana usually grows slowly, and the fastest way to evolve is by absorbing it from others. If this is Turan's first time and he's already like this, then his potential is on a different level. Korn concludes the shepherd is not ordinary at all. Turan goes tense, the air between them turning awkward. Korn calls his name to pull him out of that silence, then bows and apologizes. He asks which noble house Turan belongs to. Turan answers by calling Korn by name, catching the veteran off guard. Korn stares at him, surprised. Turan tells him to clean his wound first. Only then does Korn fully register his injured arm. Back at the cabin, Korn sits at the table with his arm cleaned and tightly bandaged. He asks to be forgiven for pushing Turan into a fight and for acting out of line. Turan shuts it down. He says he isn't anyone important, just a shepherd who doesn't even know who his father is. He tells Korn to stop. Korn reads the seriousness in his face and agrees. Then Korn asks the question that won't leave him alone. Why would someone that powerful choose to live as a shepherd? Turan explains it was his mother's request before she died a few years ago. She warned him that if nobles found him, he would be turned into a disposable tool. Korn says his mother was wise. Turan is thrown off by that reaction. To him she always felt overprotective. Korn tells him she wasn't completely wrong. Great power always drags conflict behind it. He brings up a war from 20 years ago between noble houses, a brutal clash between House Arabian and House Sahar. The fighting is shown as something massive and unforgiving, and thousands died because of it. Out of 3,000 knights serving House Arabian, more than 900 were killed in the fighting. Korn's voice turns heavy as he admits the worst part. Every friend he had, everyone he knew well, ended up in that third who didn't make it. He remembers losing friends, losing family, watching them wiped out by the enemy until only he was left. The Wanderer says a warrior's life can end far faster than the life of a normal commoner. Still, he points out that Turan's mother misjudged one thing, his talent. That catches Turan off guard. The old man admits he is a skilled swordsman, but even so, Turan erased that phantom with disturbing ease. He says Turan's potential sits at a noble level, maybe among the highest talents around. Turan stays quiet, letting those words sink in. His mind starts drifting toward what that kind of future would mean. Then he asks if the story about his father being a knight was even true. The Wanderer explains that rare cases exist, cases where things don't follow the usual rules. After that, the veteran suggests Turan would be better off leaving the hill and seeing the world. Turan asks why. The older man answers that humanity still needs protectors to tame the land and stand between people and danger. Then he catches himself and apologizes, realizing Turan still doesn't fully understand how magic works. He breaks it down. Some abilities come from lineage, traits passed down from ancient ancestors. Those inherited traits are what split people into social classes. The mage asks if Turan ever felt like certain spells were too easy, or if he had any natural ability that didn't seem to cost mana at all. Turan wonders if it isn't just mana that makes him physically stronger than others. Then he mentions his sharp sense of smell. The mage confirms that a strong nose can be a lineage trait. He adds that skill with throwing weapons is linked to House Arabian, though it's common enough that it doesn't narrow much down. Turan pushes him to keep going and the older man agrees. But Turan notices something off. The visitor's mood shifts. His face tightens. Turan calls it out, confused. The swordsman turns serious. Turan asks what changed. With a steady stare, the elder says he already knows which noble house Turan's abilities match most closely. Turan asks which family. The veteran holds that calm, guarded expression a moment longer, then reveals it. Turan's traits belong to one of the kingdom's great houses, a family known everywhere as the Hunters. House Sahar. The name lands like a hammer. Turan goes still, shocked into silence. The sound of it echoes in his head, leaving him numb. He can barely accept that he carries the lineage of Zahar, the same house that brought so much death and pain to the man sitting across from him. He looks at the veteran and wonders if the same cursed blood runs through him, the blood of the war's villains. He doesn't know what to do with that. He doesn't know if he's supposed to apologize for people he never met, crimes he never committed. The guilt still presses down anyway, heavy and stupid and hard to shake. The silence breaks when the older man says his name in a calm, steady voice. He places a hand on Turan's shoulder and tells him to stop wearing that crushed look. He reminds Turan that he wasn't part of the past war, not even close. Still, the weight doesn't leave Turan's chest. The elder smiles softly and says that was a fight for adults. Holding on to hatred only stretches the suffering out forever. Turan asks if the man feels any regret. The veteran asks what he means. Standing there in the open pasture, Turan asks if the man regrets telling him to leave the mountain life. The old man explains the truth without dressing it up. If Turan goes after power, the path will pull him toward House Sahar sooner or later, because talent like his won't be ignored. Turan is startled by how direct it is. But then he realizes something else in the man's words. Despite everything, the veteran trusts him. He believes Turan's character is clean, and that there's something solid and decent inside him. The old man says he saw Turan's kindness the moment he risked his lifelong secret just to save a stranger. Looking ahead, he thinks someone like Turan might even stop new wars before they start. Then he tries to ease the tension, telling him not to treat everything like a death sentence, since he still hasn't chosen his path. Turan looks toward the horizon and feels his thoughts settle. They're clearer now than they've ever been. A small smile forms as he admits he has finally decided to come down from the hill and see the world for himself. The veteran is glad to hear it, but he warns against leaving too suddenly because of his injuries. Turan answers that he won't go anywhere until his friend is fully healed, and that choice shows exactly what kind of person he is. Watching him from the window later, the older man concludes Turan truly has a rare heart and a future that won't stay small for long. After that, the veteran begins teaching. He explains that magic needs mana, the so-called key to omnipotence. Turan turns that over in his mind, but the old man corrects the idea. Mana isn't as absolute as people make it sound. Turan asks what decides how mana turns into real magic. The man raises 3 fingers and says the difficulty depends on 3 things: lineage, affinity, and causality. He starts with lineage. It's tied to family blood and affects most nobles. He uses his own injury as an example. Turan admits he couldn't heal it with magic. The veteran explains that some lineages can heal without training at all, like a family from the south whose power does the work naturally. Then he moves to affinity, describing it as familiarity. Turan understands right away and compares it to how he made a fireball by treating it like a thrown stone. The veteran agrees, adding that simply creating flames wouldn't give the same speed or force as shaping it with the right feel and method. Finally, he names the last and most important factor: causality. Even he admits he doesn't fully understand it. To show what he means, he asks what would happen if Turan tried to strike him using only raw mana. The result would be weak because there's no cause built for the effect. He demonstrates on the mug. The water begins to boil. He explains that this kind of result appears when mana is pushed without the right cause behind it. Turan watches and says he finally understands it a little. If he wants to take someone down, he needs to create a cause that makes sense, like launching a fireball instead of just forcing mana forward. The veteran is impressed and jokes that Turan could have been a scholar. Then Turan asks why he needs these rules for magical beasts if he can control normal animals. The old man explains the difference is the mana inside the beast. Turan takes it in and realizes a real mage doesn't just throw mana around, they understand how it works and why it sticks. Turan asks if the Zahar lineage has its own special ability. The veteran confirms it does and says they're known for tracking. Then he challenges Turan to try it. Turan accepts immediately. He closes his eyes and focuses, willing himself to leave no trace, no sound, no scent, nothing. White smoke starts to rise off his body as he pours energy into the spell. The older knight watches closely, unsure if it actually worked. Then Turan vanishes from the chair. Only a faint streak of golden light remains on the floor. The veteran confirms it worked because Turan is no longer visible. Seeing that ability in action tightens something in him, the old fear he carried from the past. The room feels empty, like Turan erased himself from the world around him. A moment later, Turan reappears in a flare of light, proving the spell held. The veteran calls it a terrifying gift, one feared by Arabian knights for good reason. Still, he warns that invisibility isn't perfect. It has limits and weak points. He decides to teach Turan how to train it. Turan questions whether it's dangerous to help someone tied to an enemy house. The veteran reminds him that Turan saved his life and treated his wounds. With a hand pressed to his chest, he makes it clear he trusts Turan's character completely. The scene cuts to the village. The chief shouts in disbelief when he hears Turan is selling his sheep and leaving. Turan stands ready for the road, equipped for travel, while the chief complains that he's leaving without warning anyone. The mage with him only smiles, questioning why Turan should care what others think about his own property. Turan lays down terms. If they don't pay a fair price, he'll release the whole flock and walk away. One of the men Turan beat before calls out in panic, warning the chief not to push him. The chief grumbles, knowing Turan is the type who follows through. With no real choice, he hands over a bag of coins and the sale is done. The elder tells Turan to do whatever he wants. And with that, the 2 travelers finally leave the village behind. On the road out, Turan remembers the village still owes the mage payment and offers to collect it for him. Korn refuses right away. He says he won't take anything because the one who truly killed the magical beast was Turan. Turan accepts that with a small smile, and they keep walking side by side along the dirt road until the trees thicken and the forest line comes into view. At the forest edge, Korn stops and says this is where they split. He apologizes for not traveling together and admits he feels better moving alone. Turan accepts it and thanks him for the help and the lessons. Korn gives a quiet farewell and tells him to stay safe out there. Turan answers the same way, hoping they'll meet again someday. He stands there and watches for a long time as Korn's figure shrinks down the trail and finally disappears. Only later does Turan understand why he never wanted Korn to talk to him in stiff, formal ways. Deep down, Turan had always wanted a father figure. Someone solid to follow, someone to measure himself against. Korn had filled that empty space without even trying. He had become the kind of man Turan wanted to grow into. The scene shifts. Footprints cut across pale sand in a dead desert. Wind howls through rocky cliffs and jagged formations, dragging dust across the ground. Alone, Turan moves forward with his hood up, crossing the open wasteland with no cover and no comfort. He shields his eyes and keeps walking step after step through heat and grit. Then he sees movement in the distance. A group of people out there in the desert. His first thought is traveling merchants. The chance of directions and help feels like luck. He heads toward them, hopeful. As he gets closer, he prepares to ask for the nearest city. The leader challenges him instead, asking what kind of person blocks their path like that. Still, the man gives an answer. He says the road leads to a city called Murai. Turan takes it in and nods, relieved. He thanks the man and turns to continue on his way. That's when one of them stops him and tells him to wait. The tone changes. The man asks if Turan really plans to leave after taking what he wanted. He says if someone receives something they should give something back. The group draws their swords. Their message becomes clear without any need for more words. They order him to remove his bag. Turan finally understands. This isn't a merchant group. It's a trap. They're bandits. The leader smiles like it's routine and makes it worse, implying nobody would question a death out here. They tell him to hand everything over peacefully, like that would be the easiest way for everyone. Turan reads them fast. These aren't petty thieves. They're the kind who don't hesitate to kill. A flash of training cuts through his mind. Korn's lessons. Causality. Building a real cause before forcing an effect. Making power stick. Turan's face settles into calm confidence. He decides these men will serve a purpose. If they want to fight, then they'll become his first real targets for training in the open desert. One of the bandits stares at Turan's calm face and can't understand his attitude. The group starts laughing. One of them mocks him, acting like the boy is speaking as if he were a mage. Turan answers without hesitation. His hand begins to glow and he lets them see exactly what they walked into. He shapes the air with a quick motion and summons a twisting tornado. The wind explodes outward and throws the thieves across the sand like they weigh nothing. As they hit the ground, he notes that shaping wind with his hand costs far less mana than creating it from nothing. The bandits groan and scramble, trying to understand what just happened. Turan is momentarily surprised by how easily it worked. He doesn't waste time. He grabs his water and sets up the next spell. The liquid shifts and hardens into a sharp ice spear, floating in the desert air. Then more form beside it, several cold projectiles hanging in place, ready. One bandit freezes in pure fear as the mage's power becomes undeniable. The spears shoot forward. One of the thieves is pierced clean and drops, finished on the sand. Turan judges the result without emotion, thinking the spell would be even better near a real source of water, and that throwing rocks still feels stronger. The leader collapses to his knees and begs, claiming he didn't know Turan was a mage. The others rush to offer everything they have, promising anything if he spares them. Turan answers by stomping his foot into the sand, making it clear he isn't listening. Stone pillars surge up from the ground and drive forward like a moving wall. The bandit chief stares, horrified, unable to believe what he's seeing. The end is ugly and quick. One by one, the thieves are crushed and wiped out by Turan's magic. Turan walks up to the leader, who panics and promises to answer anything if he's allowed to live. Turan asks why they attacked without any plan since he could have been a mage. The answer makes Turan blink. The man says it happened because Turan bowed. The leader explains they assumed politeness meant weakness, that a respectful traveler had to be an ordinary person. Turan takes that in. Instead of anger, he feels something colder, clarity. He thanks the man because that answer teaches him something useful. Hope surges in the leader's face. He asks if Turan will really spare him. A single drop of water rises and floats above the man's head. The leader remembers Turan's name, and the night with Korn flashes back like a warning. Korn had said Turan would meet many people, and he had also warned him never to feel pity for bandits who hurt others. Turan finally understands why that advice was so hard. Sparing one out of soft feeling can cost 10 innocent lives later. The lesson settles into him like a weight. His expression turns firm. He decides he has waited long enough. He ends it. Afterward, he follows the cart tracks cutting through the sand and keeps moving across the desert. As he walks, a clean thought rises for the first time, sharp enough to hurt. He looks back at the trail and realizes he has taken human lives. Guilt pushes up in his chest, but he doesn't let it steer him. He remembers Korn's warning and knows people who steal without hesitation will do it again. The confusion in his heart slowly quiets and he keeps walking. After a long stretch of travel, the desert finally gives way to a new sight: life, movement, color. Turan stares, stunned by what opens up ahead. On the horizon stands a city, wide and busy, with a massive castle rising at its center. A sign marks the place. Mirai. It's called a small city, but to Turan it looks enormous. He has never seen so many people gathered in one place. Even the buildings look strange compared to the rough village structures he grew up with. As he steps into the market streets, surrounded by noise and crowds, he finally feels like he has entered a real city. He stops at a fruit stand. The vendor greets him with loud energy at first and asks what he wants to buy. Turan answers that he isn't there as a customer. Instantly, the vendor's mood turns sour. He tells Turan to leave if he isn't buying anything. Turan is thrown off by how fast it changes. He wonders if there's some rule here where you have to purchase before you're allowed to speak. To test it, he points at the red apples and asks what they cost. The vendor names the price in Dupit and keeps studying the young outsider with open curiosity. Turan starts counting out coins and the seller adds that he accepts other types of payment too. After the purchase is done, Turan asks where he can find an inn. The vendor points him along a route and tells him to follow the path. Turan follows the directions and ends up in front of the biggest place around, a large building that works as both a bar and a dormitory. The moment he steps inside, a young employee named Lena greets him with a bright, friendly smile. She throws in a compliment about his looks while Turan asks how much it costs to stay the night. Lena tells him the daily rate is 16 dupit. Turan agrees instantly and doesn't even hesitate. He hands over his money bag, but he says there's something important he wants to ask. Lena holds the payment and leans in, curious. Turan asks if there are any monsters nearby with cash rewards on their heads. He needs targets to hunt, both to absorb mana and to build up coins. Lena goes quiet and stares at the gold. Turan asks why she stopped talking. Lena finally answers that nothing comes free in this world, then mentions City Hall. Turan looks lost. Lena is surprised he doesn't even know what City Hall is and calls him a total country bumpkin. She explains that public matters are handled there, and the people working inside do it under the local lord. She adds that it's probably closed already and tells him to go early tomorrow. Then Lena asks if Turan is a monster hunter. Turan doesn't understand the term. Lena explains the local legend. Normal people can become mages by hunting monsters. She asks if that's what Turan is aiming for. Turan touches his hand and doubts it, thinking it sounds like a silly superstition. A strong man cuts into the conversation and says it's real. He claims he saw it happen with his own eyes. Lena stiffens when she recognizes him. Midden? Midden announces he won't stop until he becomes a mage. Then he pats Turan on the head, apologizes for barging in and starts to step back. Turan doesn't let it end there. He's interested now and asks Midden to explain more about becoming a mage through hunting. Lena, looking bored, shrugs it off. If mages grow stronger by hunting, she says, then regular people should become mages the same way. At least that's the idea people cling to. Midden confirms that he and his group hunt monsters for exactly that reason. Turan asks if anyone in the group has become a mage yet. Midden answers that there are only 4 of them in the city. Then Midden looks Turan over and notices his clothes. He asks what kind of weapon Turan even has for hunting. Turan shows him his slingshot. Midden studies it and can tell right away it's been used a lot. He says a weapon like that could handle small monsters, things like rabbits or foxes. Then he admits his group needs another marksman and invites Turan to join them. Turan answers with a faint, unreadable smile. He turns the offer down. Later, he's shown lying in his room trying to rest. Staring at the ceiling, he thinks about how the day turned into one surprise after another. He looks at his backpack and still can't fully believe he really left his village behind. He wonders what comes next, and blue mana flickers around his hand. 2 knocks hit his door. Turan sits up at once, alert, and calls out to ask who's there. Korn's warning flashes back in his mind: never drop your guard, not even in an inn. A city isn't automatically safe just because it looks busy. The lesson lands again loud and clear. Turan draws his mana in, steps toward the door, and prepares to open it carefully. Turan doesn't swing the door open. He cracks it just enough to peek through, keeping himself hidden. His eyes stay sharp and tense as he checks who's outside. To his surprise, it's only Lena, the inn attendant. She smiles and asks if he was already asleep. Turan looks confused. Lena says she came to warm him up, because she assumed his room was cold. Turan asks what she means. Lena answers with a suggestive look, saying it's exactly what it sounds like. She lingers in the doorway with a shy posture and offers to stay with him for money. Turan asks what happens if he isn't interested. Lena steps closer and says he shouldn't pretend, claiming his face gives him away. Turan doesn't react the way she expects. He shuts his eyes and pulls on a calm, blank expression, like a monk who has cut off all desire. Lena freezes, shocked into silence by how unnatural his reaction is. Another memory flashes up, Korn yelling at him not to do that. Korn had warned him that many girls like that carry illnesses and trouble. Turan remembers the lesson clearly: don't let desire drag him into something stupid. Lena leaves in a huff. Turan lies back down and thinks the city isn't easy either. First the fruit seller, now Lena. The place feels cold, quick to bite. Elsewhere, one of the monster hunters questions his leader. He asks why the boss wanted to bring the newcomer along when he doesn't look useful. Maidan answers that the boy's arrogant attitude would make him perfect bait. But the truth slips out too. The newcomer reminded him of his younger self and he worried about that flimsy weapon. If the rookie stayed near him, maybe he'd survive a little longer. Back in his room, Turan hears the conversation through the wall. A slight smile pulls at his mouth. Maybe the city isn't as heartless as he thought. The next day, Turan heads to the city hall to start for real. Inside, an employee greets him politely and asks what he needs. Turan asks if he's an official. The man answers with a look that says the question is obvious. Turan gets straight to the point. He says he came to hunt monsters. The official looks surprised. Turan recalls Korn's warning again. This world won't be kind for no reason. Korn had said the way to be treated well is simple. Show people you're a mage and respect follows. Turan holds that thought as the official hands him a paper with a hunting request. The man warns him not to take the poster, only read it and return it. Turan studies the drawing and asks if it's a crow. The official mocks him, asking if it looks like a cat. Then he gives a real warning: bring the monster's body back. If the mana isn't handled, it can turn into a phantom. Turan says he already knows. Leaving a magical beast corpse behind carries a death penalty. He remembers the disaster before and states he won't repeat that mistake. He asks why the knights aren't the ones hunting. The official says they don't have time because their job is keeping order inside the city, not chasing threats outside. He looks down on Turan and says this kind of work is for outlaws like him. Turan leaves. The official watches him go and assumes another corpse will end up outside. Then everything flips. A crow-like monster's eye snaps open with a sharp, sinister glow. Then the scene shows it already dead on the hall floor, a huge wound torn into its chest. Employees stare down at the body, stunned. They can't believe how fast it happened. Turan has already returned with the corpse. Turan confirms he killed it alone and asks how to claim the reward. The official stammers and says they'll pay. He hands over a bag of coins and tells Turan to get some rest. Other workers inspect the body and note the wings are still intact, impressed by the clean condition. Then someone notices Turan hasn't left. He's still standing there. The receptionist asks why he's still in the hall instead of heading back to the inn. Turan asks if there are any other monsters worth hunting nearby. The official is stunned by the question. He can't believe the young man is still asking for more hunts after coming back that fast. The scene shifts to the inn. The most expensive dishes on the menu are spread across a table. Lena sets down a full feast and admits she never imagined someone like him would take down 30 monsters in 3 days. She comments that he must have made a fortune. Turan eats without holding back. Even while enjoying the food, Turan stays serious. Coins aren't his real goal. He's after mana. That's what matters to him, and absorbing it has already made him far stronger. He can feel it clearly. His mana has multiplied since meeting Korn. But he also senses a ceiling approaching. Weak creatures aren't going to push him much further. Lena doesn't really understand what he's talking about. The owner and Lena stare at the table afterward, shocked that he cleared everything alone. The owner jokes that he eats like a starving wolf despite being skinny. Lena looks pleased that he liked it. Turan thanks them and says the food was good. As he starts to leave, someone grabs him from behind. A heavy hand clamps onto his clothes. A group of bullies steps in, blocking the way, asking if he's enjoying something good all by himself. One of them calls him a beanpole and says he heard Turan has been earning a lot of money. The brute suggests he should donate some of it to them and swings a slap at him. Turan blocks it easily. The attacker freezes, shocked. Turan stays calm and throws the words back at him, asking if he wanted a little charity after all. That makes the bully snap. He roars and winds up a full power punch. Turan slips aside and answers with a clean hit that launches the man across the room. Another goon grabs a wooden bench and rushes in. Turan stops it with one hand and shatters the bench like it's dry twigs. Then he clamps a strong grip onto the attacker's cheek and twists with effortless control. Blue light flickers in Turan's hand, and the goon drops hard to the floor, finished. Lena rushes in with a tight, forced smile trying to calm things down. Then she snaps, yelling that fighting inside the inn is forbidden. Later, the bullies are shown bowing low and offering apologies. Back in Turan's room, Midden shows up and says he already dealt with them and it won't happen again. He explains they've been short on money and got jealous seeing Turan's winnings. The two goons stammer out their apologies. Turan asks if things are really that rough. Midden admits they're tight. He clenches his fist and says in about 3 days he'll scrape together enough to pay for the room, but it's his own problem. Turan holds out a bag of coins with a small smile. Midden stares, stunned. Turan says it's payment for Midden's kindness earlier for inviting him. Midden asks how Turan knew. Turan repeats the rule of the city: nothing is free in this world. Then he asks for information in return. Midden brightens, saying that's what he does best. The scene cuts to a wide view of Mirai, its buildings packed together under the shadow of the castle. Turan stands on a cliff preparing to move, thinking this might be his last hunt in the city. Midden has already given him details about the next city, so it's time to go. Turan admits that information was worth it. He also decides Midden is a good man. When he compares him to Korn, he feels the difference. Midden is less experienced but in some ways more open and kinder. Then Turan's eyes widen. A familiar scent hits him, sharp and wrong. His stomach tightens. Hoping he's mistaken, he takes off at full speed into the forest. He finds huge claw marks ripped into a tree, clear signs of a fight. His expression turns hard as he follows the trail of destruction deeper into the woods. Then he finds it. A horrible scene. Someone is down, badly injured. Turan recognizes him as one of Midden's hunters. He studies the area with a cold, focused stare, trying to piece together what happened. The man's eye is lifeless. He didn't survive. Coins lie scattered nearby, half buried in dirt and splashed across ground stained bright red. Crouched beside the blood-stained ground, the young mage tries to make sense of what happened to Medon and his team. The signs are wrong. Too much damage. Too fast. Then a faint sound cuts through the silence. He turns and finds another hunter barely alive, slumped behind a tree. The man forces out one last word with the little strength he has left. Rabbit. It doesn't make sense at first. Then a brutal image flashes through the scene, an oversized rabbit with a mouth smeared red. The young man scans the area again and spots more bodies. Too many. All torn apart. This wasn't a normal ambush. They were slaughtered by a monster. A shape moves. A giant rabbit-like creature steps out, red eyes burning, horns rising from its head like twisted crowns. The young mage pivots immediately, squaring up to face the killer. The beast attacks without warning. It explodes forward at a terrifying speed, closing the distance in a blink. The young man is caught off guard by how fast it is and barely manages to react. He slips away at the last moment. The rabbit stops for a beat, locking onto him with raw hatred. He gathers mana and forms a barrier of air in front of him, bracing for the next hit. With a quick flick of his fingers, he shapes an attack and launches a sharp blade of wind straight at the creature. The strike lands, but the rabbit answers in a way he didn't expect. It whips its tail like a weapon and smashes the air barrier apart, shredding it as if it were thin glass. The young man reads it instantly. This thing has fought ranged attacks before. It knows how to deal with thrown weapons. The rabbit stomps hard enough to shake the ground and charges again, trying to crush him head-on. It leaps high, then dives down with full force, aiming to end it in one blow. Its eye flares with intense light as it commits everything into the strike. The young man dodges again. The rabbit slams into the ground instead, carving impact into the earth. It doesn't slow down. It spins and sprints at high speed, staying on him, refusing to give him space. The young mage closes in at the right moment and drives a direct mana strike into the creature's face. The impact makes it scream in pain. He uses that opening to pull back, jumping away to buy distance and time to think. Then the rabbit's body starts glowing. Golden energy spreads across it like a coat, and the pressure in the air shifts. It charges again, faster than before. Its speed becomes hard to track. It starts producing afterimages, splitting into blurred shapes as it zigzags across the clearing. The pattern is meant to ruin aim and force mistakes. Dust erupts, thick enough to hide movement. Inside the cloud, the monster screams and tears through trees, smashing trunks apart as it thrashes and hunts him down. When the dust thins, the truth shows. The rabbit is hurt. Blood leaks from a paw on its back. Its mouth is smeared red, but its strength is fading. Then it drops. The massive rabbit collapses to the ground, finally defeated. The young mage stands alone in the clearing, steady and ready, already thinking ahead. He approaches the body and moves to do what matters most now: take the mana before anything else can go wrong. He extends his hand and starts absorbing immediately. Green energy pours into him in a heavy stream. The amount is insane. It dwarfs the mana he took from the leopard before. The power flooding into his body is so large it almost doesn't feel real. Behind him, the surviving hunter speaks again, calling him a mage. The young man confirms it, and the hunter demands to know why he hid it. Tears gather in the man's eyes. He explains that none of them had families to pass anything down to, and now there's nothing left but loss. His thoughts drift to Medon and the dream they all carried together. A memory surfaces. Medon once talked about a city called Orem, a place with a library. He described it with a proud smile, saying it held thousands of books, open for people to read. Medon noticed the young man finally reacting, finally caring about something he said. The young man asked how to get inside. The answer had been simple and cruel: entry wasn't for everyone. Only mages were allowed into that library. Back in the present, the hunter questions what the young man meant when he said he had decided something. The young mage makes it clear. He's going to Orem, the great city Medon spoke about so much. Later, he looks over the graves with a heavy, quiet stare. He leaves his hunter friend behind with that sadness still sitting in his chest. Then he turns and walks away, carrying a final wish that Medon finds peace wherever he ended up. After a long stretch on the road, the young man finally reaches a city packed with life. The noise, the crowds, the scale of it all makes his old awe for Murai feel almost embarrassing. A sign makes it official. This is Orem, the great city, massive and buzzing like it never sleeps. He never expected so many people to be trying to get in. He joins the line at the gate and watches the guards work. The security looks strict, like they're hunting criminals or troublemakers. Compared to smaller towns, this place runs on tighter rules and sharper control. Then one guard singles him out and orders him to stop. The young man pauses, confused. The guard's face twists with disgust as he points at the traveler's filthy clothes and says entry isn't allowed like that. The message is clear. Clean up first, then come back. Later, once he finally gets inside, he sees it. The library. A towering structure that rises above the city like a fortress, huge and heavy, impossible to ignore. He tilts his head up and remembers Medon talking about this place like it was a dream. The building looks unreal and he wonders if magic shaped it. He walks toward the entrance and draws the attention of two guards stationed at the door. He makes it clear he wants to enter. One of them shuts it down immediately, warning that the library is only for mages. The young man doesn't hesitate. He states that he is a mage. The guard stares at him like he just heard nonsense. Anger follows fast. The man demands to know if he wants to get dragged out for pretending, because someone like him couldn't possibly be a mage. The guard moves to shove him away. Red mana flares from the young man's hand. The guard freezes, stunned. A memory of corn surfaces. Mages can recognize each other easily. By sensing mana, they can even tell who is stronger. The young man's eye ignites with a deep, frightening red glow. Pressure floods the air around him. The guard is thrown backward by sheer force and crashes to the ground. His partner rushes to help him up. The shaken guard tries to act fine, but the truth hits him hard. This isn't some minor mage. This is someone from the noble class or higher. He introduces himself as a knight of House Baltas and asks which family the young man belongs to. The young man questions whether he even needs to answer to get inside. The knight says it isn't required for entry, but adds a new barrier. Using the library needs permission from the master of Baltas. He says he'll contact the noble house. The next scene shows the young man sinking into a luxurious bath with a tired sigh. He had expected getting into the library to be simple. Instead, it's already turning into a full process. A maid appears, watching him with a shy look. Then more maids step in and start attending to him. He clearly doesn't like it. He wonders how his life turned into this. 3 young women helping him bathe like he's some priceless guest. He awkwardly tells them to stop. They answer at the same time, obedient. One explains that if they fail to serve an important guest, they'll be punished. He gives up arguing and tells them to do what they want. The maids visibly relax and thank him. After the bath, one maid stares at him, openly impressed, then slaps a hand over her mouth when she realizes she reacted too strongly. Dressed in clean, new clothes, he asks if something is on his face. She apologizes and admits she blanked out because the guest is too handsome. He lets it slide but tells them not to speak to him so casually. Then he catches his reflection in the mirror and freezes for a moment. Cleaned up, he barely recognizes himself. A young woman with red hair walks into the room and studies him with sharp curiosity. She teases him, implying he was the guest who showed up looking like a beggar. Then she admits the truth with a smug smile. After a bath and proper clothes, he now looks like a prince. He gives his name as Turan. The red-haired woman introduces herself as Azella, a noble of the house. She asks which family he belongs to. He refuses to reveal it. Azella smiles like that answer is a gift. She says it's a shame he won't share his origin, and her eyes narrow with interest. If he wants to hide, then she decides it's time for a little game. Orange mana detonates through the hall like an explosion, flooding the room with crushing pressure. The blast catches Turan off guard. Azella stands there with a challenging look, pushing her power outward and demanding he show his own. Turan feels the weight of her mana slam into him, heavy and intense, and he realizes just how dangerous this noble woman is. The moment Turan sensed Azil's spirit force, he answered with his own, letting his energy pour out without pause. In a blink, the entire room drowned in raw power as the two forces met. Their mana slammed together head-on, making the air turn thick and hard to breathe, trembling under the strain. A guard rushed in front of the maids, putting himself between them and the spreading pressure, but the heavy aura still rolled through the chamber like a storm that refused to settle. After several tight seconds, Turan cut off his release. Azil stopped as well, already done testing him. She didn't look threatened. She looked pleased, almost too pleased. Her eyes dropped to her hands, studying them with a strange focus, like she had just proved something important to herself. Then she flashed a playful smile and threw out a sudden marriage proposal. The words hit Turan like a strike to the head. He locked up, stunned, his thoughts wiped clean for a moment. Azil noticed his frozen face and teased him for reacting like that, brushing it off as a joke, yet still pushing him to consider it. She made it clear the place beside her was empty. With that final jab, she turned and left with her guard, her presence sticking to the room even after she was gone. Turan stayed where he was, stuck in place, trying to untangle what she meant. He glanced down at his hand, feeling the faint aftershiver from their clash still lingering in his body. Doubt slid into his mind as he quietly weighed what he had just felt. Her mana matched his. If that was true, then maybe this level of strength wasn't rare here. The scene shifted to a different room. A man waited there in calm silence, Rug Valtas, the Lord of Orem. When Turan entered, the noble received him with steady composure, acknowledging that Turan already knew who he was. Rug repeated Turan's name as if testing how it sounded, then went straight to the point. Turan wanted access to the library. Rug didn't waste time feeding fantasies. People came chasing rumors, so he shut them down early. There was no hidden ancient miracle inside that library. No secret method to skyrocket mana overnight. Turan listened without flinching. He accepted it outright, making it clear he hadn't come for cheap shortcuts in the first place. Rug studied him for a moment, then allowed it. Nothing inside was confidential to the house anyway. Still, the day was already late. Turan would rest and return tomorrow, and Rug asked if that was fine. Turan showed real gratitude, bowing his head, promising he wouldn't forget the kindness. The next day, the Grand Magic Library came into view. Turan walked toward the immense tower, its height stabbing into the sky like it was built to challenge the heavens. At the entrance, the guards checked him and confirmed his pass, welcoming him into the Sky Library. Turan pushed the doors open and stepped inside. His body stopped on instinct. Rows and rows of books rose above him in a massive circular design, climbing upward in a spiral that looked like it never ended. The air felt old and heavy with time, carrying the dry scent of parchment and knowledge sealed away for centuries. Turan had never seen anything like it. Awe slipped out of him before he could hold it back as he took in what the place truly was. Then a voice came from nearby, greeting him by name. He turned and found a young girl standing there. She introduced herself as the librarian, chosen by the Lord to manage the library, and stated she would explain the rules for using it. She claimed the rules were simple. Turan stared, thrown off. In his mind, the disbelief hit fast. This kid was the librarian? She raised one finger and started laying it out. If he damaged anything, he would pay for it. No messing around with books. And while he used the library, she would watch him the entire time. Turan nodded, but hesitation showed as he asked for distance while he read, admitting it would feel wrong with her hovering close. Then curiosity pushed through and he asked if she had read the books here too. She answered like it was obvious. If he needed something found, he could rely on her. She claimed she was the best at it. Then she tilted her head with a sharp, playful edge and pressed him for what he wanted, tossing out options like romance, history, or something dirty like it was all the same. Turan was caught off balance by how blunt she was, but he steadied himself quickly. What he wanted wasn't entertainment. He wanted the world's basic common knowledge. This time it was the librarian who looked surprised. She reacted fast, moving with surprising speed as she gathered a heavy stack of books and dropped them in front of him. Most of what sat in that library had survived for hundreds of years, which made it useless for anything recent. Still, she guided him toward a section that could at least fill the gaps and give him something close to practical. Turan thanked her with real sincerity. She brushed it off with an easy, casual answer. He picked up one of the books and stared at it like it was a strange tool he had forgotten existed. The thought slipped out of him as if he was relearning something basic. Then he opened it carefully and started reading. The moment his eyes moved across the pages, something lit inside him. The feeling wasn't small. It was sharp, almost hungry. The book wasn't just ink and paper, it was a door. From there, his life fell into a strict routine. Every single day he went back to the library. He stayed for hours, reading until it became normal, until it became necessary. Day after day he drowned himself in the knowledge packed into those ancient walls. Little by little the world stopped being a fog. He learned the shape of the land, the borders, and the names that mattered. He learned the races that lived in it and how they dealt with each other. He learned how wizards were expected to behave, what manners mattered, and what rules people pretended not to break. He absorbed the methods used to create and process items, how materials were handled, refined, and turned into something useful. He studied monsters that hunted in distant regions and relics that had survived since the ancient empire's time. With every detail he took in, the empty space in his head filled. What used to feel like a wide, unknown void gained form. The blurry parts sharpened. The pieces connected. The world became clearer, heavier, and more real. Then the scene shifted. The Lord stood in front of him again, calm and controlled, checking whether Turan had used the library well. Turan confirmed it with respect. The Lord made something clear right away: this had nothing to do with noble status. Granting access had been goodwill. And now the Lord wanted payment for that goodwill. Turan didn't stall. He made it simple: say what was needed. A monster had appeared north of Orem and had started attacking travelers. Turan met the Lord's eyes and understood the direction immediately, pushing the idea forward without games. The Lord continued, and his face tightened. The Phrenides who were sent to handle it never came back. They were eaten. That meant it wasn't a clean job. It meant someone with real power needed to step in. The Lord's house could only mobilize a small number of people right now, which made the situation worse. Turan agreed without drama. Deep down, the reason was clear: protecting people was part of what a wizard should do. Still, something about it rubbed wrong. It raised a quiet doubt in him: weren't wizards usually the type to avoid getting involved in problems like this? The Lord added another reason. The northern route mattered. It was a major trade path for Orem, and it had been shut down for 10 days. It needed to be reopened fast. Turan counted it in his head. 10 days. That was before he had even arrived in Orem. The pieces clicked. That explained why the Lord had handed him library access so easily in the first place. The scene shifted again. A large group left the city in an organized procession, moving north toward whatever waited out there. Among them, a comment cut through the march, an observation that the Lord was bold enough to send even a guest to hunt a monster. The voice belonged to Hisaril. She walked at the front with easy confidence, pushing the pace like she owned the road. The tone carried teasing, but there was a sharp edge behind it, like she was poking at something real. It turned into a pointed question about whether their side was truly that unreliable. Then she dismissed it, claiming she wasn't blaming anyone, just calling her father a man who created problems. The man beside her let out an awkward laugh and pushed back, suggesting that calling the Lord a messmaker was a bit much. Hisaril shut it down without effort, clearly not bothered. That same man then turned toward Turan and shifted into a more formal mood, treating it like a proper first meeting. He introduced himself as Marvin Voltas and made it clear he expected to work together. Turan returned the introduction in the same calm manner, and the group continued forward. Hisaril, still leading, kept things simple. She wanted the job finished fast so they could return and rest. While they walked, Marvin leaned slightly closer to Turan and lowered his voice, probing whether Turan had any interest in Marvin's older sister. Turan rejected the idea instantly without hesitation. Marvin looked genuinely relieved, like that answer removed a problem he didn't want to deal with. Then the men at the front threw up a signal for everyone to stop. Ahead of them lay wreckage, what looked like the remains of a destroyed carriage. Broken pieces were scattered across the path, torn apart in a way that didn't leave much doubt. The signs of violence were obvious. Whatever had hit it didn't do it gently. As they inspected the wreckage, one of them muttered a question about whether the creature was responsible. Another quickly settled on the likely answer. Since their side had blocked travel to the north, the victims had probably come from the south and walked straight into the attack. Turan stayed quiet and studied everything. He checked the scattered debris, the broken path, and the marks left in the dirt. His focus tightened as he read the damage like a message. Then he stated the conclusion with calm certainty. Was a monkey. Head snapped toward him. The word didn't match what they expected. Azil repeated it with open doubt, as if testing whether he was serious. Turan lowered himself and pointed to a large print pressed into the ground. It wasn't a claw mark. It was a palm. The kind of imprint that explained the strength behind the smashed carriage. The creature had hit the merchants and slipped back into the forest afterward. If they found the trail and chased it, they could reach it. Azil's face tightened. Chasing it meant tracking magic, and she barely had enough control to do something like that. She pushed the question to Marvin. He admitted he couldn't either. Someone mentioned a knight who could handle it, but before the thought finished, Turan stepped forward and took it on himself. Azil watched him with sharper interest, probing whether he came from a specific bloodline known for that kind of skill. Turan didn't make a big deal out of it. He simply made it clear he used this method often and had practice. He started immediately. The moment he focused, his senses shifted. He drew in a deep breath, and the air gave him what his eyes couldn't. Faint traces of the monster's presence began to separate from everything else, as if invisible lines were rising into view. He followed them for a short distance, then stopped and pointed hard to one side. The trail went that way. The group moved with him until the trees opened near a riverbank. Turan halted and scanned the ground and the waterline. The scent ended here. The creature had washed itself. Azil frowned, refusing to accept it. A monster using water to erase a trail sounded too clever. Turan didn't argue in circles. Maybe it did it on purpose. Maybe it washed itself simply because it wanted to. Either way, the result was the same. Then the scent hit again, stronger, closer, sudden. Turan's eyes widened just a little as the danger snapped into place. He turned fast and warned them it was behind them. Everyone spun around. A massive monkey-like monster stood there, bigger than expected, built like a moving wall of muscle. It roared again and again, shaking the air with its voice. In its huge hands sat several heavy stones, already lifted and ready to launch. Knights and soldiers shouted in alarm, trying to form up, trying to react. They didn't get the chance. The monster attacked first, and the moment it moved, everything broke into chaos. Stones crashed down like falling chunks of a cliff. Soldiers were hit brutally, some blasted off their feet, others crushed where they stood. In seconds, bodies piled up across the ground, wounded and dead. Turan barely escaped a direct hit, twisting away at the last possible instant. When he stabilized, his eyes caught the lifeless remains scattered across the dirt, the scene turning ugly fast. Gisela barely held on, forcing herself behind the bodies of two fallen soldiers, using them as cover. From that position she screamed for them to attack. Inside Turan's head, one thought cut through with bitter clarity. His mother had been wrong. The remaining soldiers tried to push forward anyway, desperate to strike back. But the monster shifted, turning as if it intended to run. Turan didn't let it. In one smooth motion he drew his weapon. No hesitation. No wasted movement. He released a single strike. The force behind it was not normal. Blue energy exploded outward like a focused beam, cutting through the air with brutal speed and perfect aim. The pressure of it froze everyone who saw it. One blow was enough. The massive creature was erased, destroyed completely as if its size had never mattered at all. Silence dropped over the riverbank. The survivors stood there in disbelief, their eyes slowly drifting toward the source of that finishing strike. Turan walked forward without hurry, weapon still in hand. He spun it lightly as leftover energy rolled off his body. A faint blue aura continued to flow around him, calm and cold, sealing the fight with a single final decision. The gorilla monster fell with just one hit. The brothers are stunned by what happened. The mage quickly took the chance to finish the monster. With an immense fire coming out of her hand, as if she were the very incarnation of a dragon. With just this blow the monster is obliterated, forming a huge explosion. So that's the bloodline ability of House Voltas pyromaniacs. The warriors around can finally breathe in peace. After all, in fights against monsters they are weak. The mage goes to speak with the protagonist. She got chills for a second while the rock was coming at us. Then the brother jokes about the situation, asking if the little sister got scared. Shut up. He's the one who screamed like a little girl. When did he ever do that? Meanwhile, the warriors are checking who is injured. Some of them have broken arms. Quit whining. There's someone whose whole arm got blown off. Anyone got spare bandages? This guy's head keeps bleeding, what do we do? Maybe try applying this medicine on. Our protagonist has the first vision of what the battlefield is like. What a mess. He guess we're lucky there are no casualties. Yes, it was a surprise attack by a monster, but this was a fight where we could have avoided even serious injuries. The scene of the mages holding bodies to protect themselves still echoes in the protagonist's mind. Considering their bodies get stronger based on their mana, they should be several times tougher than the knights. And yet they didn't hesitate to use people weaker than them as shields. The older brother noticed the protagonist's gaze and asked if something was wrong. No, it was nothing. The sister draws the protagonist's attention. After all, the most important part of this whole battle is absorbing the monster's mana. The three gather close to the monster and raise their hands. Turan begins the process of absorbing the monster. Just like the book said, even if multiple people absorb it at once, the degree of enhancement doesn't seem to get reduced. During this process, something curious happens. The girl stopped because she reached the maximum she could absorb. This crappy growth limit of mine. The brother also reached his limit. Meanwhile, Turan continued the absorption process naturally. Now the girl understood why her father sent Turan with them. That level of spell proficiency and a mana capacity that rivals her. To think he's a noble who hasn't even reached his growth limit yet. By the end of the afternoon, everyone returns to the capital. Come to think of it, if it weren't for Turan, we would have never defeated it. From the tracking ability, to landing the hit that knocked the monster down. It was his attack that did it. Please, it wasn't anything spectacular. If anything, he regrets noticing it too late and letting it get the first strike. He didn't think it would have a search ability as well. Wow, it had a search ability? Yes. It seems like different abilities awaken depending on the monster's external traits. The monkey we killed had big hands and big eyes, but it looked nothing like its original form. It probably awakened an ability to throw things with great force, and the ability to see far away or to see through the forest. The brother is surprised by that explanation. He can't believe Turan figured out all that in such a short time. Actually, he looked through a monster encyclopedia at the library earlier. The library? That stuffy place. No one goes there. She went in once a long time ago because she was curious, but it was filled with difficult books, so she left without even reading half a volume. Next time you get the chance, ask the librarian if there are any easy books. The girl seems surprised by this information from the protagonist. The librarian? Yes. The person who manages the library. Was there even someone like that in the library? And with that information, the protagonist was also left confused. Welcome back, Turan. He was careless. No knight or commoner would ever call a noble by their name. In this city, the way you address a noble is only using esteemed one. And besides, the way that she looks doesn't exactly scream librarian. How do you know his name? The librarian noticed the intent behind the question. With a simple smile, she questioned it. Only now did he notice. As he thought. She learned it from his permit. As long as it's around this library, her gaze reaches anywhere. How should he address her, then? She doesn't have a name, so call me whatever he wants. How about something cute like my love? In that case, he will use librarian. He's so stiff. After using me for days, calling me to do this and that. She is talking as if the protagonist were a pervert, ha ha ha. He never did that. And don't come so close. It's a bit burdensome. Is she a wizard from the old empire? No. She wasn't a person to begin with. She's kind of a spirit. But it suits her, right? When a soul inhabits something living, it becomes a living spirit. When it inhabits something neither alive nor dead, it's a spirit. In other words, the library itself is her. This form is just for comfortable communication. Basically, it's the user's preference. Though your preferences are kind of. Don't make stuff up. But it's true that she's like a reflection in water. Then, curious, the protagonist begins to look more carefully at the spirit. And indelicately, he places his hand on her chest. Was there no better place to check? Where are you touching? Feels weird. He apologizes. You have no idea how annoying it is. That she can't directly exert power on an intruder. If she could, the librarian would have punished every last bastard who carelessly took books out of the library. It seems House Voltas doesn't know you exist. No, maybe it's everyone who's ever used this library. That's because until now, there was no one with the qualifications to perceive her. Her creator made it so only those whose type is complete beyond a certain level could see her. So only him can see me, she thinks. Pretty romantic, isn't it? What does she mean by type? It's what a wizards call bloodline. Could she tell him about his bloodline? He should ask his parents about that. Unfortunately, he is an orphan. Then she can check it for him. All she needs is your consent to examine your body. While saying this, she licks her lips as if she had just found meat and she were a carnivore. Examine his body? What do you mean? She makes an expression as if she were a ghost. Is this really how it's done? Suddenly, she puts her hand inside the protagonist's chest, leaving him startled. Wow, we're connected. Don't say weird things. It doesn't hurt though. There are a few small bits, but the big chunks are the pursuer and hunter bloodlines. Was that a trait of House Sahar? Yes. But something strange happens. She begins to feel more. It was mixed. What's mixed? It means he's the result of two people with different bloodlines. Then what's the other one? She doesn't know either. It's still locked. A locked bloodline isn't that rare in bloodline combinations. As he grows stronger, it will open naturally. He got it? But a concern comes to his mind after this revelation. Mother, she was far too polite and educated to be a commoner. Maybe she was a descendant of some noble. A bloodline so diluted it couldn't even hold night-level mana. All right. He understands more or less, thank you. If he's grateful, stay one more month. After learning the true identity of the library spirit, Turan didn't continue reading alone. He kept asking about the contents of the books and requesting explanations. So there are really that many invisible substances. The librarian even knew the knowledge contained in books that had been plundered from the library and vanished over the past thousands of years. That's right. If he makes water float in the air, shapes it like this, and then looks through it, he will be able to see it directly. Having the laws of nature taught to him in plain words was a treasure beyond measure. He learned that all kinds of diseases spread through such microorganisms, and that the decay of living things is caused by the feeding of such germs. Not only that, he also grasped basic principles, like the refraction of light, the generation of heat through friction, and the process of how living things get injured and how they heal. With this knowledge acquired, he decides to conduct an experiment with decay. As soon as he touched the apple that looked healthy, it quickly turned rotten as if it had no life left. So how is it? It's incredible. It's not something that existing magic can't do, but just understanding the principle makes him consume far less mana. Simply changing the way he perceived the world raised his skill as a wizard. Maybe some powerful houses are monopolizing knowledge like this. If every wizard knew it, they'd lose their competitive edge. No wonder people's level of knowledge keeps dropping as time goes on. Now she kind of understands why. It's about time he should leave. Oh, he's leaving. Yes. The owner of this place has been openly giving me hints to go. Take me with you. As she tries to hug him, she ends up passing right through and falling to the floor. Can you even leave this place? No. Can't you just stay here? She will take good care of him, Sorry, but he will pass. He's not ever going to say he will stay. This land has a lot of the gods' legacy, so go look around once in a while. Maybe among them there's a spirit who might know even more than she does. He will come visit from time to time. Come if you want or don't. But she's clearly sad that Turan is leaving. Don't worry, there are still so many books he haven't read yet. Finally, he left the city. According to the continental map he got from the library, House Zahar's base, the Emerald Desert, is east of Orem. He will head to Zahar and find clues about his parents. But there's no need to rush. If the clues were going to disappear, they would have already vanished sometime over the last 18 years. And if they're still there, then going a little later won't make them disappear. While walking through the forest, defeating monsters that appear, the protagonist hears a noise and decides to hide to understand what is happening. He sees a huge horse apparently protecting its owner, who is on the ground. A saddle. The monster wasn't attacking him but protecting him. What a demon. What kind of pet monster is that strong? Is the monster the one that is being attacked? Until, upon paying closer attention, he notices that they are dark elves who are near the horse. Try to create an opening somehow. Easy for you to say. They begin to cast dark magic and some animals that were dead around start to rise like zombies. So this is the dark elves' necromancy which he read about in that book. Should he help? But the man lying over there may have been the one who attacked the dark elves first. But soon came the confirmation. Turan observes the dark elves feeding. Whose hand is that? Give me one too. Eat your own. She must have already taken some for herself. So they were cannibals. Turan uses the special stealth ability. The ones she killed were all men, so they were way too hairy. Suddenly, the monster's head is hit by a spell from the protagonist, leaving the companion without reaction. What just happened? Quickly, she activates her own ability and gives life to new monsters to protect herself. When another stone buffed with speed by Turan is approaching, one of the monsters throws itself in front to protect the master. Who was that? Come out. The bull keeps destroying everything in front of it, hoping to hit the hidden enemy. So the enemy is using the stealth ability. Let's see if the enemy can still hide after this. She summons a special type of wolf that uses an ability to detect traces of magic, which quickly ends up revealing our protagonist. Found you, demon. Kill him. The monsters advance and Turan prepares himself. Creating a fire spell, he throws it at the enemies. However, only one was defeated. The bull kept advancing, hitting the protagonist head-on. They're fast. Good thing he took one of them out beforehand. However, Turan did not notice, but the fox was still alive and bit his leg. He kicks the monster to recover, but before he could react, the bull attacks again, causing him to be sent flying and crash into a tree, severely injuring him. The elf simply laughs at the whole situation. Serves you right. How dare you kill her, Kel? She will make you beg to die. But something unexpected happens. The horse delivers a kick to the elf and tramples him. Consequently, the elf calls for help from his servants to contain the horse's attack. The servants quickly go to save him, and the elf, faced with so much humiliation, swears that he will kill them all. But before that could become reality, Turan takes advantage of the opportunity given by the horse and quickly launches an attack that finishes the elf with a hit kill. The servants disappeared, leaving only the horse and Turan. Tired after this intense fight. That sure took a lot out of him. The horse approaches, sniffing the protagonist's hair, as if checking if everything was all right. Yeah. Thanks for your support. Finally, the unknown man opened his eyes. It was already night, with the moonlight shining brightly. Well, what happened? He sees our protagonist in front of a campfire. Oh, he's awake finally. Were you? He saw you being attacked by dark elves, so he saved him. Oh, thanks. The horse approaches its master till he is safe as well. That is a good horse. Not only did it understand that it had to protect its master, but even that it needed to move to a safer place. Thank you for saving me. He is Azai's of House Berg. I am Turan. May I ask if there was any particular reason he came into conflict with the Dark Elves? A reason? No, there wasn't. He was simply on a pilgrimage with his retainers, when they suddenly ambushed them without provocation. He had heard that these other races were savage, but he never imagined they would be this bad. The apologies. The people he lost this time were very precious to him. Were they your family? They were the knights and servants who came on this pilgrimage with him. They practically raised him since he was little. I see. He's a good person. Do you happen to know how many dark elves attacked you? He killed 2 of them. That should be all of them. Turan uses the search ability as if it were a radar across the entire forest. There are definitely no more dark elves nearby. Turan, do you happen to have urgent business right now? He's also in the middle of a pilgrimage himself. To think he's on a pilgrimage despite having that much power, could he be the child of some great house? But then why is he alone? That's difficult for Turan to explain. And he is not that strong. He only managed to ambush one and take him down, then he barely fought off the other with the help of that red horse. Both begin to test each other, releasing sparks of mana, and apparently both are equivalent. Unexpectedly, his amount of mana is incredible. If Turan hadn't absorbed the Dark Elf's mana, he would have had even less than him. Honestly, his raw mana alone isn't at a level where he would be overwhelmed by 2 necromancers. Which means, conversely, that he must be noble born from a powerful bloodline. And if he's on a pilgrimage, then he probably hasn't even reached his growth limit yet. Why would someone like that be traveling alone? So many questions. If you do not have a fixed destination, would it be all right for him to invite you to House Berg? He will repay you for saving his life and escorting him safely back to his house. When you say repay, what do you mean? They of Berg are enchanters, vassals of Ereban, the great house to the north, and a bloodline that has crafted magic tools for generations. Turan, he will make the finest magic tool worthy of you. Sometime later, they went deeper into the forest and buried Aziz's subordinates, the ones who had been killed by the Dark Elves. Aziz let out a low breath and looked over the scene, feeling that everything was finally nearing its end. There was some relief in him, but that feeling did not last alone. A heavier thought followed right behind it. If it were possible, he would have sent every one of them back to their hometowns, yet he already knew that would not be easy. He then turned to Turan and thanked him. Turan looked at him with slight confusion, not understanding the reason. Aziz paused before revealing it. Turan had not laughed at him. He was a noble, yet he had cried over the deaths of the men who had followed him, and he had always been made to feel that such a thing was shameful. That led Turan to wonder why he would see it that way. Aziz quietly revealed that it was what his father had taught him. He had grown up hearing that those who died in a just battle would live in the heavenly palace among the gods. Because of that, he had been taught that grieving for them was weakness, and that a true noble was supposed to keep moving forward, standing on top of that sacrifice. Even so, he could not accept that idea completely. If refusing to grieve for the death of family was what strength meant, then he felt he would never be able to become truly strong. Turan listened without interrupting. Then a gentle smile appeared on his face, and he told Aziz in his own way that this was not weakness at all. It was kindness. Aziz was caught off guard by that answer, but soon tried to ease the atmosphere. Since they would be traveling together from now on, he suggested they speak more casually. Their age gap was not even that wide. Turan gave a small nod and accepted that easily. With a smile, Aziz lifted his hand and showed that he wanted to work with him as a friend. Turan stayed still for a brief moment, repeating that word in his mind. Friend. Then he reached out and took Aziz's hand, showing that he also looked forward to it. After a while, Aziz suggested they rest before moving again, so they stopped nearby. While there, Turan noticed a box on the ground and asked about it. Aziz opened it and revealed food and wine inside. It was a cold storage chest, something he had kept stocked from the last time they had been in the city. Turan became curious about whether the inside stayed cold all the time, and Aziz confirmed it. Thanks to that tool, most food could remain preserved for around a week without any real problem. He also explained that cold food could simply be heated again before he moved on to show other magic tools. One of them released water when a button was pressed. Another could create a shelter using gathered wood. A third was made to sound an alarm whenever someone came close. Then Aziz suddenly brightened and pointed at the clothes he was wearing, proudly explaining that even those were a magic tool, one with a self-cleaning function. Turan could not ignore how impressive that was. Magic tools were not common things, and he openly showed that he found them remarkable. In his eyes, even a single set of clothing like that would already be enough to count as a reward for saving a life. But Aziz only smiled at that thought and made it clear that Turan's life was worth far more. Once they returned to the main house, he intended to repay him with much better things. And if the house refused to allow it, then he would simply make them himself. He shifted the topic, pointing out that during their time traveling together, he had witnessed so many forms of Turan's magic that he could no longer keep track. In his mind, he ran through them one by one. Control over animals, freezing, levitation, manipulation of liquids, enhancement, light creation, restraint, instant death, changes to the terrain, and even lightning strikes. That led him to wonder how such a thing was possible. He questioned whether Turan had spent his entire life training in magic or if he possessed some kind of bloodline ability that allowed him to master any type of magic he desired. Turan's eyes narrowed slightly as he kept his thoughts to himself, simply acknowledging internally that he could do it. Instead of answering directly, he reminded Aziz of their agreement not to dig into each other's family matters. Aziz quickly brushed it off with a laugh, treating it like a joke and claiming that such a bloodline ability likely did not even exist. He then shifted again, asking about Turan's age. Judging by his appearance, he did not seem older than 30, though Aziz briefly wondered if he might have lived much longer. Turan revealed that his birthday was about a month away and that he would be turning 18 that year. That answer hit Aziz hard. He could not hide his shock. He then revealed his own age, saying he would be turning 43, but soon laughed it off, dismissing the 25-year gap as something meaningless between them. Crossing his arms, Aziz reflected that it made sense now. Someone with that level of magical power being able to take down 2 wraith sorcerers was no coincidence. Still, he had not expected that there would be 2 individuals in the world with that level of talent. That caught Turan's attention, making him question what he meant by 2. Aziz explained that the other person was someone close to him, someone with an extraordinary bloodline. That other genius was his cousin. Turan immediately considered the possibility of having that person craft magic tools for him, but Aziz shut the idea down. She belonged to the main house. That made Turan curious about what the main house actually meant. Aziz explained that she was a princess of Arabian, someone who could even rise to become the head of a great house in the future. As they continued walking, Aziz went on to explain how things worked. Unlike ordinary wizard families, great houses did not simply pass leadership down to their direct children. Within a great house, there were dozens of relatives of the same generation, and it was common for someone among them to surpass the head's own offspring in strength. Even so, among the head's children, Mesa stood above the rest. From the moment her magic awakened, she had mastered a wide range of combat magic in just 10 years. That detail surprised Turan. Aziz added that because of this she had gained the full backing of her house. At only 21 years old, she had already reached a level close to the core members. Turan considered that level of power at such a young age and then brought up the matter of a funeral. Aziz confirmed it. When their eldest granduncle passed away, his magic power had been absorbed by Mesa, though the rest of the family had received smaller portions as well. That made it clear to Turan why the great houses were able to maintain their dominance for so long. Aziz then pointed ahead, signaling that their destination was near. Turan lifted his gaze as Aziz explained that they had reached the Deccan Plains, the central region of Arabian. Not long after they arrived at Zavalin, the territory belonging to House Berg. As they stepped into the mansion grounds, a woman rushed out toward them, immediately demanding to know what had happened. Aziz rushed forward, calling out to his mother as he wrapped his arms around her and broke into tears. Turan stood nearby, watching in silence, noting to himself that Aziz was already 43, yet still reacted like this. A bearded man stepped in and reminded Aziz to keep his composure, telling him to show some dignity and at least address her properly as his mother. Aziz quickly pulled himself together and apologized. He then introduced Turan as a friend from the south, someone who had risked his life to save him. Without that help he would not have made it back alive. His mother listened, confused, pointing out that the pilgrimage route was never meant to be that dangerous. She demanded to know what had happened. Aziz revealed the truth. They had been attacked by dark elf wraith sorcerers. Her expression hardened instantly, anger rising as she cursed them and declared she would personally lead an army to wipe them out. The bearded man addressed her as the head of the house and urged her to calm down, reminding her that others were watching. He then turned his attention to Turan and asked which house he belonged to. Turan admitted that he could not answer that. The man pressed further, but Turan explained that he truly did not know. He had been born to a commoner mother and had no knowledge of his father. Aziz reacted with shock, questioning why this had never been mentioned before, but Turan dismissed it as something not worth bringing up. The head of House Berg studied him for a moment. Despite his unknown origin, she acknowledged that he had saved her son and declared that he would be properly rewarded. However, she made it clear that accommodating him inside the house would be difficult. Instead, she would arrange for him to stay at the finest inn in the city. That decision frustrated Aziz, who questioned why they could not simply host him at home. She explained that under normal circumstances it would not be a problem, but they currently had an important guest staying with them. Bringing in a stranger of unknown background would not be appropriate, and she expected him to understand. At that moment, another voice cut in, saying there was no need to worry. Anyone who had saved Aziz would not suddenly turn around and attempt an assassination. A woman dressed in black stepped into view. Aziz immediately recognized her as Mesa and questioned why she had suddenly appeared there. Turan observed her closely. As the Princess of Arabian, she carried a strange presence, one that made her seem almost lifeless in her current state. Mesa explained that she had come to hide. There had been an assassination attempt, carried out by Zahar's forces. Aziz was stunned. An attack inside the main house itself should have been nearly impossible. Given how heavily guarded it was, the idea of an insider became unavoidable. Mesa confirmed that suspicion. The main house was not made up of only loyal individuals. There were always those with questionable intentions. Without lingering any further, she stated that she was tired and withdrew, leaving the others behind. After that, Aziz's mother called for a maid named Aina and instructed her to guide Turan to the second-best guest room in the house. The following day, Turan opened his eyes inside a grand guest chamber. After resting, he stepped into the hallway, where he crossed paths with Aziz once again. Aziz noticed that Turan was up early as usual, and wondered what he was doing alone. Turan gestured toward a magic lantern fixed on the wall, finding it interesting. Aziz casually mentioned that he created those from time to time for practice and offered one to him. But after hearing that, Turan showed little interest and dismissed the offer. Without warning, a massive flash of lightning roared past the windows, lighting up the entire hall. Turan turned toward it, confused, while Aziz calmly explained that it was Mesa training. He noted that she was always that diligent. Turan questioned whether that was the magic tied to Arabian bloodlines, and Aziz confirmed it. It was the Storm bloodline. He admitted he had never resented his own, but there was a hint of envy in him. Watching her made it feel as if she was turning into something beyond human, almost like a god. That sparked Turan's curiosity. He began to wonder just how powerful the next leader of Arabian would be. Aziz picked up on that interest and suggested going to see for themselves. Turan hesitated. He was curious, but as an outsider with an unclear background, approaching her did not seem like a good idea. Aziz dismissed the concern. He pointed out that Turan was not an assassin and insisted he could vouch for him. Deep down he admitted he also wanted to see something for himself. He wanted to know who was stronger between Turan and Mesa. Turan quickly realized that was the real reason behind the suggestion. Aziz laughed it off and admitted the truth. He had been holding on to a grudge for years and wanted to see Mesa struggle, even just once. The two of them headed toward the training grounds where Mesa stood alone. Aziz called out to her. She turned, her gaze immediately falling on Turan. She questioned who he was and Turan introduced himself. The name sounded familiar to her. She recalled hearing it the previous night and questioned why they had come. Aziz explained that they had seen her practicing and thought about joining in just like before. But Mesa brought up what had happened the last time. Back then, Aziz had stormed off in frustration after she learned something in 2 attempts that had taken him an entire week. That memory made Turan laugh without thinking. Aziz shot him a look and Turan quickly backed off, apologizing for the reaction. Aziz then questioned if Turan was mocking him as well before turning back to Mesa. He declared that Turan possessed unmatched magical talent and proposed a duel between them. Mesa repeated the idea of a duel, her eyes locking onto Turan. A faint blue glow spread through her gaze as her mana began to rise. Turan instinctively looked toward the sky. The clear weather had already shifted into darkness, and a storm gathered overhead. Lightning crackled as her power continued to expand, growing heavier and more oppressive with each passing second. The aura around her became overwhelming, making her presence feel monstrous. Turan's body stiffened under the pressure. His eyes widened as the weight of it bore down on him. When it finally subsided, he was left breathing hard, sweat forming across his body from the sheer intensity. After a brief silence, Mesa studied him and reached a conclusion. In her view, he was not on her level. Facing her in a direct duel would be difficult for him. Turan did not respond. He simply kept his gaze fixed on her, focused and unshaken. Aziz stepped forward with a grin, interrupting the tension. In terms of raw magical power, he admitted Turan would not be able to compete with her. But that was not where Turan's true strength lay. Aziz placed a hand on his shoulder and emphasized it. Turan's ability to learn magic was what made him exceptional. In all his life he had never seen anyone like him. Turning back to Mesa, he questioned whether even she could match that level of talent. Mesa listened and decided that if he was being praised that much, then it was worth seeing for herself. Turan met her gaze and proposed a different approach. Instead of a direct clash, they would each demonstrate a spell the other likely did not know. Whoever managed to perform it faster would be the winner. Aziz immediately supported the idea and looked to Mesa for her answer. She accepted but added one condition. Since Turan did not even know the magic tied to his own bloodline, using her innate abilities would make things unfair. So she chose to exclude them from the duel. With that decided, she stepped forward onto the training ground to begin. Mesa lightly tapped the stone floor with her foot. At that point of contact, a small sprout broke through the surface. Turan and Aziz watched closely as the tiny plant rapidly expanded. In seconds, it grew into massive vines that spread across the entire courtyard, twisting and coiling in every direction. Before Aziz could react, the vines wrapped around him and lifted him high into the air. He ended up hanging upside down, completely caught. Mesa then turned her attention back to Turan, identifying the spell as plant creation and manipulation magic, and challenged whether he could do the same. Aziz screamed while hanging upside down, begging to be released as dizziness overtook him, but she ignored it completely and kept him there, finding amusement in the situation. Turan, however, focused on the vines. His thoughts moved through the principles of magic. Fire creation was simply the manifestation of burning, while water creation was the extraction of unseen moisture from the air. He crouched and placed his hand against the solid stone floor. In his mind, the answer became clear. These vines were no different. The spell was not about creating something from nothing. It was about forcing seeds already buried in the ground to grow at an unnatural speed. It was not creation. It was growth. With that understanding, he directed the seed to grow. A surge of blue mana pulsed outward. In an instant, several blue vines burst from the ground and coiled tightly around him. Mesa's expression shifted into shock as the plants obeyed him perfectly. Aziz was just as stunned. She quickly realized what had happened. By understanding the principle and commanding the plant to grow, Turan had grasped the true nature of the magic on his own. She questioned whether he had seen the spell before, but Turan made it clear that this was his first time encountering it. Mesa let out a quiet scoff, admitting that, for once, Aziz's praise had not been exaggerated. She then released her magic and Aziz dropped straight to the ground, groaning as he hit. Without hesitation, she shifted the focus back to Turan, telling him it was now his turn to present a challenge. Turan thought carefully. Using the magic tied to Zahar's bloodline in this place would be reckless. Then something came to mind. He extended his hand toward the tall grass nearby. A small rat emerged and ran straight toward him. Mesa watched with doubt, questioning if this was nothing more than simple animal control. Turan caught the rat and held it firmly. In his view, this was only the starting point. The creature itself was merely an ingredient for what he intended to do. Mana surged. Blue energy wrapped around the struggling animal as its life force began to drain. Its body shriveled rapidly, collapsing into a dry husk within his grasp. He then presented the result, making it clear that his demonstration was complete. Mesa observed the outcome with a serious expression before stepping forward to take her turn. With a simple motion, she summoned another rat. She grabbed it and attempted to replicate the same process, but nothing happened. She closed her eyes, focusing. This was not ordinary magic. The method behind it was unclear, and that gap in understanding slowed her down. Aziz watched and questioned why Turan had chosen such an unsettling spell. Turan admitted it was simply the first thing that came to mind. At the same time, he wondered if even a great house like Arabian lacked full understanding of this principle. Aziz began to assume it was not working and suggested ending it there, giving Turan the victory. But Mesa refused to accept that. Her mind moved through the structure of magic. Causality was a complex factor. If the intended effect followed natural logic, the spell became more efficient. If the user understood the cause clearly and had enough mana, success was guaranteed. Among all factors, the ability to recognize the cause was critical, affecting both efficiency and success. She needed more time. Without full understanding, the only option was to compensate. By pouring in a large amount of mana, inefficiency could be overcome through sheer volume. She forced the command. The rat in her hand let out a sharp cry as its body began to rot while still alive. Its form quickly withered, turning into a dried husk identical to the one Turan had created. Aziz immediately noticed that it had worked. Mesa let out a breath, her voice tired, acknowledging that she had succeeded. But the moment after, her body faltered. A wave of exhaustion struck, her vision blurred, and she collapsed. Aziz panicked, shouting as he rushed toward her. Both of them knelt beside her unconscious body. Turan analyzed the situation. At first, he considered that she might have overused her mana, but that alone would not usually cause someone to faint. Normally, it would only lead to extreme fatigue. His attention shifted to her hand, and the real issue became clear. Her body lacked proper nutrients. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms and questioned whether there was anyone nearby with a healing-type bloodline. Aziz admitted there was no one like that around. Turan immediately gave instructions. Water and salt needed to be brought to her room along with the adults. As he carried her, he noticed how light she felt in his arms, so light that for a moment she felt less like a person and more like something fragile, like a lamb. Even the mana she had been using just to keep her body standing had already been drained. What remained was a body that should not have been able to move at all. After some time, Mesa slowly opened her eyes. Aziz's mother, her aunt, rushed into the room in panic, calling out to her and checking if she was conscious. Mesa looked at her, confused, not understanding why she was there. The woman quickly explained. Aziz had told her everything. Mesa had suddenly collapsed while training magic with their guest. The memory returned to her. Her aunt pressed further, asking if it was true, and whether that man had done anything to her. Mesa denied it immediately. There was no fault on his side. It had been nothing more than a mistake on her part, something small that had spiraled out of control. The pain in her head grew worse. She asked everyone to leave, unable to endure the throbbing any longer. Her aunt lingered for a moment. She mentioned that she had prepared some soup and placed the bowl beside the bed. She reminded Mesa that skipping meals for the sake of magic was not sustainable. Her health mattered too. Even if it was just a little, she needed to eat. Only after saying that did she finally leave the room. Mesa watched her go. A quiet sense of gratitude slipped through her, barely audible. Then her attention shifted to the bowl. She picked it up and took a spoonful of the warm soup. But the moment it touched her, a memory surged back. Her mother and her sister under attack. Their voices, filled with desperation, calling out to her. They believed she could save them. The weight of that memory crushed down on her. Pain twisted through her body. The bowl slipped from her hands and shattered against the floor. She struggled to steady herself, trying to regain control. At the same time, Turan had been sent below, confined within the Berg family's basement. There he found himself inside the temple of the limping goddess. A massive winged statue stood before him, illuminated by a dim golden glow that filled the underground space. A guard dressed in black stepped forward, drawing his sword. He made it clear that both the walls and the doors of this place were flawless, without even the smallest crack. They were built like muscle, hardened over hundreds of years. Breaking through was not an option. The man identified himself as Harem Berg. Turan showed no resistance. He understood and made it clear that he had no intention of trying anything. Harem stepped closer, emphasizing just how solid the structure was. Turan acknowledged it, but Harem pushed further, reinforcing that it was more than just solid. For a moment, it felt like the man was boasting. Then, without warning, Harem swung his long sword in a sharp, precise motion. Turan's eyes followed every detail. Curiosity rose, leading him to question what the man was doing. The answer was simple: training. Harem moved again, his body flowing through a sequence of strikes and steps with perfect rhythm. Turan watched carefully. There was no wasted movement. Every action served the next. Each motion was the minimum needed to generate force for the following strike. It was efficiency in its purest form. He wondered if this was what a truly trained body looked like. Harem eventually stopped and turned his gaze toward him. Turan quickly apologized, unsure if he had interrupted. Harem dismissed that and instead asked what Turan had seen in those movements. He stepped closer, closing the distance until their faces were nearly aligned, waiting for an answer. Turan gave it honestly. It had been impressive. Harem stepped back and explained his view. Most nobles dismissed martial skill because magic allowed them to attack from a distance. Their bodies were weak and their minds failed to command them properly. Instead, they relied on easy methods. Turan acknowledged the logic behind it. Unless someone possessed a bloodline built for physical combat, focusing on magic was the more efficient path. Still, he pointed out a flaw in that thinking. In real situations, there would always come a moment that could not be avoided, no matter how much one wanted to stay distant. After hearing that, Harem extended his sword toward him. He told Turan to take it. Turan hesitated, questioning whether it made sense to hand a weapon to someone who had been locked up as a suspicious outsider. Harem showed no concern. To him, the weapon was nothing more than iron. What gave it meaning as a sword was the one wielding it. And with a weak body, Turan would not be able to harm him anyway. Turan took the sword. For a brief moment, he considered what he could even do with it. Harem watched him closely. Then everything changed. A massive surge of blue mana erupted from Turan's body, taking the form of blazing energy that wrapped around him. The pressure filled the space instantly. With the sword in his hand, Turan stood firm, his gaze locked directly onto Harem.
Harem fixed his eyes on him and snapped that it was wrong, ordering him to stop feeding mana into the weapon. Turan answered with a simple acknowledgement and pulled his energy back under control. Harem stepped in without hesitation, grabbing him and forcing his posture into place with his own hands. He pushed him to shift more weight onto the front legs, driving it down so the ground would take the impact. He pointed out the elbow rising too high, warning that weak arms like that would never handle the weight of a blade. At that pace, he made it clear, an enemy would stab straight through his thigh. He forced Turan's arm up again and pressed him to stop limiting himself. Turan responded with a firm yes. Harem gave a short nod, calling it acceptable, then demanded 10 more repetitions. He ordered him to keep breathing, to drive that breath into his muscles instead of letting it fade. Watching him, the seasoned guard judged that Turan's body had strong potential, the kind that needed to be pushed until nothing was left. Harem dismissed mana as nothing more than cheap tricks. He claimed mages fooled themselves into thinking their bodies were reliable, when in truth they only used the bare minimum. A body trained the right way, he insisted, could cut through a battlefield without relying on mana at all. That difference had to be understood. Turan exhaled heavily under the strain and accepted the point. Then his attention snapped away as the temple's heavy doors opened. Aziz's mother stepped inside. She lowered her head deeply and asked for forgiveness, admitting she had done something unforgivable to their benefactor. Turan stayed calm, suggesting the apology should come from him instead. He assumed the young lady was unharmed and admitted that, as a guest, his behavior had crossed the line. The head of House Berg explained that Mesa wished to apologize properly and asked if he had time to spare. Later, Turan stood alone with Mesa inside a large parlor. She remained by the wide window, looking out as she reflected on how troublesome the situation had become. She had heard he was trapped in the temple because of her, and admitted regret for causing such pointless chaos. He approached her and stated that it had been necessary, adding that her safety was what mattered. She turned to him and brought up the magic from the previous day, the one that caused animals to rot. She questioned if it was some hidden bloodline ability, pointing out how absurd the mana cost had been and wondering if he had deceived her. Turan denied it and explained that once the principle was understood, anyone could use it with ease. She let out a low hum, noting that he clearly had no intention of teaching it for free. Without revealing the method, there would be no proof it was not bloodline magic. He made it clear that winning or losing did not matter much to him. That answer threw her off. She questioned him, pointing out that ending things like this would damage her image as the Princess of Arabian. She proposed a trade. If he revealed the secret behind that magic, she would share one of Arabian's hidden techniques in return. Turan accepted without resistance. He began breaking it down, explaining that the base of it was bioenhancement magic. He asked if she had used unseen microorganisms. She confirmed it, then froze as the realization hit. That explained the efficiency. She had overlooked the hidden factors. Frustration slipped out as she admitted the loss. Even though she had forced a win at the end of their duel, it had relied purely on brute strength. Turan pointed out that it could still count as part of the bet, but she rejected that idea. In her view, magical skill had nothing to do with dumping large amounts of mana without control. Slightly embarrassed, she asked him to tell Aziz it had been a draw. She had no intention of letting him grow arrogant over a win. Turan agreed. She then moved to repay him and picked up a comb. Rubbing it against a surface, she showed how objects could attract after friction. She turned to explain the reason with confidence, but he cut in and identified it immediately as static electricity. Her face went blank in shock. She questioned whether he already knew. He confirmed it. Under her breath, she admitted that this alone had been considered one of their deeper secret techniques. Realizing she needed something he did not already understand, she decided she would have to think further about how to repay him. She proposed that until she figured out proper compensation, they should train together. She quickly tried to cover it up, claiming it was only to settle her debt, not because she actually wanted his company. Turan answered with a faint smile and agreed, suggesting they start the next day and meet in the garden by evening. The scene shifted to a vast dining hall, the table packed with rich, carefully prepared food. Aziz's mother downplayed it, saying it was nothing special and urging him to eat as much as he wanted. Aziz stared at the spread, confused, asking why it had been prepared so extravagantly. He pointed out that even on his birthday, he had never seen something like this, adding that anyone would think the Lord of Arabian himself had come to visit. His mother shut him down immediately. Turan studied the table and recognized there was nothing ordinary about it. The head of the house turned back to him and brought up their earlier discussion. She asked if it was true her son had promised a powerful magic tool in exchange for his life. Turan confirmed it. She then asked if he had something specific in mind. He explained he wanted something focused on defense. Hurting others with magic was easy, but protecting oneself was far harder. If possible, it needed to guard against sudden attacks. She replied that she had crafted similar items before, so it would not be difficult. However, nothing suitable was ready right away. Aziz stepped in, asking if he could make it himself, but his mother cut him off, warning him not to drag Hausberg's name through the dirt. At that point, Aziz's brother Milo raised his hand and took the task. He mentioned he had just completed a request from the main house and now had time available. Their mother asked how he planned to approach it. Milo explained that for protection against surprise attacks, it had to be something Turan could carry at all times. He planned to embed mana into jewelry, rings, earrings, or necklaces, creating an effect that could draw out the defensive traits of a guardian bloodline. She accepted the idea and asked how long it would take. Milo answered with 1 month. Their mother remarked that while it was improper for a parent to boast, Milo was already a skilled wizard, not far below her level. Hearing this, Turan understood the weight of what was being offered. A full month of work from the head wizard of an enchanter house was far beyond what he expected. He spoke up, thanking them but questioning if it was too much. She turned that back on him, asking if he truly believed her son's life was worth so little. From her view, it was not excessive at all. Then she ordered him to remain as a guest in their home for the entire month. He was told to settle in and live comfortably. The next morning, Turan walked through the busy streets of Zavilan with Aziz. Aziz noted that his mother seemed to have taken a strong liking to him. He admitted that before going to sleep, he had spoken to her about Turan, his talent and his discipline, how he never slacked in training. At first, she had intended to look down on him as nothing more than a wandering noble with no backing, but that opinion had clearly changed. Turan observes that it sounds like she is trying to recruit him into their house. Aziz confirms this, explaining that she gives generously, puts people in debt, and then introduces a pretty young lady as a way to tempt them. He mentions several adults in the house joined that way. Turan notes, "This is troubling." Aziz tells him not to worry and says the magic tool is just something nice to buy favor. He assures Turan he will not be forced into marriage even if he wants the magic tool, claiming his mother is not so lacking in refinement. He then asks what Turan has for the rest of the day. Turan explains he promised to train with Lady Mesa in the evening and asks if there is anything the matter. Hearing evening, Aziz says there is still quite a bit of time until then. He pulls Turan toward a different area, telling him to patrol with him instead. He promises Zavalon may not be the capital, but there is plenty to enjoy. He jokes, asking if Turan was planning to hole up in a corner practicing magic on a day like this. Turan admits that he was. Aziz says life is too short not to enjoy it and drags him along. Aziz takes Turan to a casino with roulette tables and card games, but Turan refuses. Later, they visit a lively bar for drinks, and he still refuses. They wander through the market of the city. Suddenly, Turan stops and stares at the posters on a wall. His eyes widen in shock as he looks at the drawn face and thinks about corn. He asks himself if it could truly be that corn. After that, they go to see a drama where blades clash as they tell a story. It was the year 2195 when the warriors of Arabian ventured into that demon desert. There was a knight named Korn who defeated the enemy with God's help after a hard-fought battle. Turan and Aziz applaud at the end. Aziz asks Turan if it was worth watching, and he answers that it was very good. He remembers Korn saying he is merely an ordinary knight and thinks his humility is unmatched. He vows that someday when he meets Korn, he must ask if that story is really true. Early the next morning, Turan opens his eyes and sees Harem staring at him. Harem asks if his body rested well. Turan says yes, and asks what brings him there. Harem says he noticed yesterday that Turan's body is quite good. He declares it is time to toughen it, and commands Turan to follow him. Turan asks if they are going to train, and Harem says the body does not grow stronger by lying around, but only when it is being tempered. He asks if Turan does not want to do it. Turan agrees to go, thinking he will gain more that way than just playing. Aziz suddenly bursts into the room, shouting Turan's name and saying he heard there was a really fantastic performance today. He sees his uncle Harem Berg and is surprised. Harem looks at him and says they are heading to training. He tells Aziz that he must also temper that weak body of his and asks if he will come. Aziz backs away with a terrified expression and lies, saying he was just out and came back now, so he has not recovered yet. He runs away at full speed. Turan watches him go and wonders why he is acting like that. He soon finds out the reason as he is forced into a heavy weightlifting session. Harem looms over him as Turan struggles with massive plates. He tells him not to listen to his body's cries and demands one more. Turan groans in agony. Harem scolds him, saying that if he yields after barely this much pain, then his mind is being dominated by his body's weakness. He commands one last repetition as Turan's muscles tremble. Finally, Harem says that is enough and lets him stop. Turan collapses on the floor, gasping for air. Harem asks if it is tiring, and Turan gasps that it is. Harem says Turan is fortunate because, as a wizard, doing this once is enough. Turan wonders if it is different for someone who is not a wizard. Harem explains that an ordinary body weakens again over time, even after being tempered once, and needs constant trials to maintain it. However, wizards have mana maintaining their bodies in optimal condition, so once it is forged, it does not weaken. He smiles at Turan and declares he must be fully rested now. Turan looks at him in shock and tries to say he is still tired, but Harem's expression darkens as he says he knows Turan's body does not lie. He declares that Turan has rested enough, and now he will teach him weaponry and combat. Turan screams in exhaustion as the training intensifies. The following days at Hausberg are fulfilling. He wakes up early to train with Harem in a special space where the body becomes several times heavier than usual. One wrong step, and he would be pressed into the floor. In the evening, he returns to the mansion to continue magic training with Mesa. She shows him how to use finger friction to generate electricity as golden lightning crackles between her hands. Before he realizes it, 3 weeks pass. Turan attempts to fire a bolt of lightning at a target, but it misses. Mesa watches from behind and notes that he is struggling more than expected. Turan smiles and says it is because he is not from Arabian. She admits it is difficult for her to guide him as well, since she never trained lightning magic in that way. She wonders if it should not hit just by firing it, but Turan explains it is harder than it seems. Suddenly, someone calls out to Lady Mesa as a man approaches. The man looks at Turan and asks who he is. Mesa responds coldly, saying it is none of his concern, and asks why he is there. She reminds him that she told the main house not to approach her while she was recovering. He reports that the patriarch has summoned her. She asks the reason and tells him to answer quickly, warning him to be ready for punishment if it is trivial. The man delivers the news. Dark elves have been rampaging across the south. 3 cities have already fallen, and the main house is assembling an expedition force. Mesa orders him to inform them she will return soon. The messenger bows, accepts the order, and leaves. She turns to Turan and says she needs to go. After a brief pause, she reflects that before leaving, she should collect payment for his decomposition magic. An idea forms, and she claps her hands. She looks directly at him and asks if he knows that electricity flows through the human body. Turan is confused and questions if that is even possible. Mesa smirks and says he would not know, as it is a secret of House Arabian. She offers to consider his debt repaid if she teaches it to him properly, adding that it will be very useful. Turan agrees. Mesa begins explaining the basic principle. When a person sees or feels something, that part of the body sends a small electrical signal to the brain. If it comes from the eyes, it travels from the eyes to the brain. If it is a smell, it moves from the nose. Turan closes his eyes and focuses, tracing those paths in his mind. He realizes that tiny electrical signals do move throughout the entire body. If he can accelerate those signals along their paths, he could achieve something remarkable. He sharpens his focus on those signals. When he opens his eyes again, he can clearly perceive them. A butterfly passes between them, and its movement appears slowed, more detailed than before. Mesa asks if he managed to do it and how it feels. He is impressed, trying to understand how it works and what it truly is. But the strain hits him sharply. He gasps and grabs his forehead. Mesa lets out a soft laugh, explaining that the reaction comes from using too much mana at once. She says it will be hard to control at first because of the headache, but once he adapts, he will be able to maintain it for much longer. He reflects on the value of the technique and states that no matter how he thinks about it, the lesson feels far too valuable compared to what he gave her. She rises into the air and tells him to treat it as a simple investment, since he seems talented. If he learns something even greater in the future, she will collect everything back along with what he owes now. She disappears into the distance as he watches in silence. The scene shifts to the center of Morgan, at the heart of the Deccan Plains, where knights and wizards of Arabian are gathered. A massive crowd of locals cheers, shouting slogans praising Arabian. Isis remarks that even though it is only a departure ceremony to hunt dark elves, it feels like a victory parade because of the excitement. He spots Mesa on horseback and waves his arms, calling out to her. His father grabs him and tells him to maintain proper composure as a noble. Suddenly, a voice announces that the head of the house is arriving. A tall figure walks through the crowd. Turan looks at the man and recognizes him as the current head of House Arabian, known as Battle Arabian. He notes that the man does not look well, and asks Isis if he is always that pale, wondering if his health is failing. Isis recalls rumors that the Lord was badly injured long ago while fighting the head of House Zahar, though it might now simply be due to age. Battle Arabian raises his hand toward the sky. The crowd follows his motion, and the clear sky darkens as storm clouds gather instantly. Golden lightning tears through the clouds with a thunderous roar. The common people begin praying to the Lord of Thunder to protect his descendants. Turan watches and realizes this is the true power of Arabian. Even in poor condition, he can cover the entire area with ease, showing the peak of what a human can reach. Turan resolves that one day he will reach that level. Later, in the workshop at Hausberg, Milo presents a leather-bound metal bracelet. He explains that simply wearing it slightly increases physical stamina, but injecting mana boosts it even more. At its peak, it reaches a level similar to nobles of the Guardian bloodline, though it consumes a large amount of mana and cannot be maintained for long. Turan holds the item and recognizes it as an incredible treasure. He notes that something like this is rare even among great houses and calls it exceptionally well made. Aziz's mother calls his name and asks if he has any interest in formally joining their house. Turan remains polite and says he is very grateful for the offer, but thinks it would be difficult. The mother sighs and says she already heard from Aziz. She reflects that since Turan has many things to do, he would struggle to settle in one place. She tells him to treat her offer as an old woman's lingering attachment. Turan lowers his head and says he will never forget the hospitality he received. He states that Aziz and the Berg family will always be his friends. She nods and says, "That is enough." As Turan prepares to leave the house, Harem, Berg, and Aziz come to see him off. Harem throws a blade toward him and tells him to take it. He explains it is a magical tool without major functions, but it is durable and very sharp. Turan catches it and thanks his master. Hearing that word, Harem shows pride. He gives a firm, satisfied smile and walks away. Aziz steps forward and places a heavy cloak over Turan's shoulders. Turan asks what it is, and Aziz reminds him that he had been jealous of his clothes before. He explains it is a shirt and pants turned into magic items that resist dirt and repair themselves if slightly damaged. Turan smiles. Aziz tells him that he is a good friend, not just for saving his life, but because spending time together and seeing how he lives gave him a lot to think about. He asks where Turan will go next. Turan says he will head east first. Aziz mentions Carmen is in that direction and warns him that if he can avoid it, he should not travel by ship. He complains about the waves, saying even wine glasses cannot stay still. Turan smiles to himself, knowing he will have to cross those waves to reach the land of Zahar in the El Real desert, but keeps that to himself. Aziz says that someone like him will not starve anywhere, and tells him to return safely and repay him for the cloak. Turan agrees and leaves. He walks through tall grass with a large bag on his back, reflecting on being alone again. He decides to test the results of his training. Turan activates his movement magic and takes a single step. He moves so fast that no one can see him. To others, it is only a sudden gust of wind as he continues forward. He crosses vast distances, passing through villages and cities, moving through forests without stopping. After a long time, he comes to a halt. He stands in a jungle, looking up at a mountain, and notices a smell. At first, it seems like a campfire. Then he realizes it is something far worse, the smell of burning flesh. His eyes widen as he moves toward it. He enters a ruined town and is struck by what he sees. The place is destroyed, with debris scattered across the ground. He walks through the area and finds rows of mutilated bodies, men tied to posts. He considers whether bandits were responsible, since dark elves should not have reached this far. As he looks around, he notices something while examining a damaged structure. A basement entrance. He approaches and stares at it. Certain this is the place, he grabs the doors and pulls them open. He looks into the darkness. What he sees shocks him. A young girl is sitting in the corner, crying and screaming in fear. Turan jumps down, raising one hand and telling her to wait, stating that he is not an enemy and that he came to help. The girl looks up at him with tear-filled eyes and asks if he is telling the truth. He answers that he is and asks if she can tell him what happened. The child continues to cry as she says that a wizard killed everyone. Turan asks if she means a wizard, but before she can respond, her body gives out and she collapses from exhaustion. He quickly catches her and lifts her up, thinking that fortunately it does not seem serious, as she is most likely just drained after being trapped for so long. He decides that the first thing he needs to do is take her somewhere safe. As he begins to carry her out, an arrow formed from solidified blue mana is suddenly aimed straight at him. A group of warriors surrounds him, and a blonde female mage holding a magic bow glares at him with intense anger, calling him a murderous bastard and ordering him to get on his knees. Turan simply stands there, holding the unconscious girl, unable to understand what is happening. He remains completely still in the burned remains of the village, while the group tightens the circle around him. The female archer pulls back the string of her glowing blue mana bow and shouts again for him to kneel immediately. Her eyes burn with hatred as she calls him a murderer and demands to know if the massacre was not already enough, accusing him of even trying to abduct a small child. A knight standing behind her begins to gather fire magic, warning that if Turan moves even slightly, he will kill him. His hands tremble as he struggles to maintain control over the unstable mana. Turan stays composed and tells them to wait, explaining that what they are seeing is nothing more than a misunderstanding. At that moment, the nervous knight completely loses control of his magic and releases a massive torrent of flames directly toward Turan and the child. A deafening explosion erupts, sending a column of fire and smoke rising into the sky. The woman immediately turns and shouts at the knight named Gil, calling him an idiot and yelling that there was a child right there. Gil panics and tries to explain himself, saying it was an accident and that he was too nervous and lost control of his power. Then she notices something and looks up as the smoke begins to clear. What appears before them leaves everyone stunned. Turan is still standing in the same place, completely unharmed, without a single scratch on himself or the child, both protected by a glowing blue shield generated from his bracelet. He glances down at the magic tool and thinks to himself that he did not expect to have to use it this soon. The knights freeze in shock, questioning whether he actually blocked that magic with just his body and how he could possibly have no burn marks at all. The blonde woman narrows her eyes, wondering what kind of defensive magic he used or if it is some kind of bloodline ability. Turan speaks in a cold and firm tone, stating that he is not the one who attacked this village and repeating that this is all a misunderstanding. However, his patience reaches its limit, and he warns them that if they attack him again, he will not simply defend himself next time. Sensing the overwhelming density of his mana, the woman slowly lowers her bow and stops her hostility, thinking that his explanation does make sense, since it would be strange for someone to cause such destruction and then remain behind just to save a child. The archer introduces herself as Bison and asks for his name. He responds that his name is Turan. Bison says that even though the circumstances point against him, she still finds it difficult to fully trust him. Turan gestures toward the girl in his arms and suggests that they ask her for the details once she wakes up, noting that it seems she witnessed the real culprit. Bison shows surprise at his words and repeats them, asking if the girl truly saw the one responsible. Turan looks confused and asks what she means by the arsonist. Bison is taken aback by his reaction and asks if he really does not know who the arsonist is. Turan answers that he does not. She explains that the arsonist is the mad mage responsible for this atrocity. Over the past few months, this killer has been attacking isolated villages, tying up the residents and burning them alive. She adds that since there have never been any survivors, they do not even know the person's gender. The only thing known is that people call him the arsonist. After some time, the little girl regains consciousness and confirms Turan's innocence to the group. She tells them that the attacker wore a red cloak and had a messy beard. She describes him as having a frightening appearance, like a lumberjack. Hearing this, the group finally realizes their mistake. They are filled with shame for attacking someone innocent. Bison and the others lower their heads, apologizing and admitting they acted rashly out of impatience. She tells Turan it was clearly her fault for pointing a weapon at him, and Gil also apologizes. Turan watches them and reflects that even among nobles, some allow their sense of duty to override their judgment, recalling that Midden had been an honest and upright leader. He looks at them and says that since their priority was the child's safety, that is what matters most, and he forgives them. He then asks if they originally came to capture the arsonist. Bison answers that they did. She explains that they arrived at the scene of a recent fire, and when they saw him, they believed they had finally found the culprit, though it clearly turned out otherwise. She states that now that they have a proper description, they will catch him soon, as they have a tracker with them. Turan becomes interested and asks for more details. Since they have a tracker, he asks if they are from the Zahar family and what they are doing in a place like this. Bison quickly raises her hand and denies it. She introduces herself fully as Bison Carmen, saying she is from the Carmen family and that the others are companions from their vassal families. She gestures toward a gray-haired teammate and explains that Asha is descended from a lineage that once mixed blood with a Zahar noble. Bison explains that Asha's bloodline manifested weakly, but it allows her to be skilled at tracking magic, even though she lacks talent for concealment. Within their family, it is referred to as a primitive bloodline. With the misunderstanding resolved, Bison makes a serious request. She asks if Turan would help them hunt down the arsonist. To make it worth his time, she offers him the full reward for capturing the mad mage and even promises to give him her share of the mana they would absorb. She explains that all she needs is the merit for completing the mission. Turan asks if she knows the arsonist's strength, considering that they have never actually seen him. Bison warns him that the man is certainly at the level of a noble mage. She points out that some of the villages he attacked were protected by multiple knights, yet all of them were killed. Turan narrows his eyes. The fact that this person slaughtered not only civilians, but also several knights leaves no doubt that he is powerful, likely a noble-level mage as she claims. He reflects that the weak demonic beasts he encountered along the road no longer help him grow stronger. He considers that this arsonist might be exactly the kind of opponent he needs at this point. He agrees to help. Bison is clearly relieved to hear it. Turan then says that before starting the hunt, they should first ensure the child's safety. The group travels to a nearby safe location. There, Turan hands the village elder a pouch of money, enough to support the girl until she reaches adulthood. The elder accepts it and assures him that he will take responsibility for raising her. To ensure the child's safety, Turan fixes a sharp gaze on the village elder and states that he will return in a few years to check, so the child must be cared for exactly as instructed. The elder flinches under the pressure and quickly assures him that he will take proper care of the girl. With that settled, the expedition begins. Turan and the others return to the ruined village. Asha, whose lineage traces back to a Zahar noble, closes her eyes and pushes her ability further. After a moment, she suddenly opens them, sensing something. She starts moving into the jungle, taking the lead and saying they still need to search more carefully. Turan asks which direction they should go, and Asha tells them to follow her as she traces the path through dense forest and uneven rocky ground. Along the way, they notice many trees have been destroyed. Eventually, Asha stops and examines the surroundings, searching for more clues while Bison and the others stay close behind. Turan asks how she is tracking him. Asha turns and explains that she first followed human footprints, and once they reached the main road, she began tracking the scent of ash. She reasons that if the killer has not changed clothes, he would still carry the residue from burning the village. Turan finds her method precise and understands why she failed to find him earlier, since she did not even know what she was looking for. Suddenly, Asha declares she found something and immediately runs ahead. Bison calls out to her, telling her to slow down, but Asha continues forward. After running for some time, they arrive near a small mountain. In front of them stands a large cave. Asha confirms that the arsonist is inside. Bison looks at Turan and addresses him respectfully, asking him to move to the front with her while instructing the rest of the group to stay behind. She casts a blue light spell, and the two of them enter the cave as the glow illuminates the walls. Bison asks Asha if the target is still inside and whether he is alone. Asha focuses ahead with glowing eyes and confirms that there is only one person. They continue deeper until they reach a wide stone chamber. There they see a man standing near several torches. He has a rough appearance, wearing a dirty red cloak. He looks at them and asks why they have come to such an isolated place. Turan asks Asha if this is the arsonist, and she confirms it, saying she senses a strange smell from him. Bison steps forward and raises an ice arrow, asking if he is the one responsible for kidnapping and burning the villagers. The man grins and says he does not know what she is talking about. Suddenly his expression shifts. He raises his hand, and a massive burst of flames erupts, filling the entire chamber. Asha and the other knights are thrown back by the blast, crying out in pain. Turan reacts instantly, raising his hands and activating his magic tool. He shields both himself and Bison from the flames. The arsonist shows surprise at his resistance. Bison uses the opening and fires an arrow that strikes the arsonist in the leg, forcing him to drop to his knees. But the fight is not over yet. He drives his palm into the ground and triggers another spell. From the earth, two giant stone arms surge upward, rising fast and closing in around Turan and Bison. Turan watches them and realizes something is off. He had assumed the attacker carried a flame bloodline, yet the man controls earth as well. The massive arms swing down to crush them. Turan slips past the strike in time, but Bison reacts too late and takes the hit. Turan steadies himself and sets his stance, spinning his sling with a rock loaded inside. The attacker notices and lifts his hand, preparing another spell. He does not get the chance to release it. Turan fires first. The stone flies with brutal speed and force, smashing into the man's hand and tearing it apart before he can react. The attacker howls as blood bursts from the wound. His body loses balance and starts to collapse. Turan closes the distance without hesitation. While moving, he rubs his fingers together, building a faint spark of lightning. The moment it forms, he unleashes the newly learned magic straight into the target. The strike lands clean. The man screams once and drops unconscious. With his focus gone, the towering stone arms lose shape and crumble into harmless debris. Turan stands over the fallen enemy, still channeling lightning, ready to strike again if needed. Bison approaches through the settling dust and questions if the threat is over. Turan breathes heavier from the effort, but judges that it is most likely finished. He tells her to leave this one to him and check on the others. He pulls out a handful of seeds and scatters them across the ground. With a surge of magic, vines burst out and coil tightly around the unconscious man, locking his body in place. Turan concludes that with his sight blocked and movement sealed, escape is no longer possible. He taps the prisoner with his dagger, forcing him awake. The man stirs and tries to gather mana, but Turan steps in close and presses the blade against his throat, stopping him instantly. He makes it clear through action that any movement or mana use will end his life. The blindfolded man demands to know who they are and how they found the hidden location. Turan gives nothing away and instead pushes for confirmation, pressing him to admit responsibility for the village massacres. The man stays silent, clinging to defiance. Turan responds without hesitation, driving the dagger into the man's leg. A sharp cry breaks out. Turan demands an answer, questioning why a rogue noble would burn innocent villagers alive. In his mind, he settles it clearly. Someone who kills like this deserves no mercy. The resistance cracks. The man breaks down and claims that everything was ordered by God. He insists that burning the bodies and souls of sinners will lead him to God. Bison and the others react with confusion and disgust, unable to make sense of it. The man continues, lost in madness. He claims he was shown a way to obtain other bloodlines, insisting that by burning more people, he will finally gain the flame bloodline he craves. Bison rejects it outright, seeing nothing but insanity, questioning how anyone could believe such a thing or slaughter so many for it. Turan's expression hardens. He recalls that power can indeed be gained through killing, something he has seen among mages and heard before. The possibility lingers, even if twisted. The prisoner keeps muttering, stuck in his obsession, repeating that only a few more villages need to burn before the power of flames becomes his. Turan grips his own arm, his thoughts turning dark. The man's words linger, and he considers the possibility that it was not just madness. A grim idea forms in his mind, that the arsonist may have uncovered something real about this world. Once he gathers everything he needs, Turan acts without delay. His blade moves in a clean motion, severing the man's head instantly. The body drops where it stands, collapsing in front of the group. The sight hits hard. Several members feel unease settle in. Bison notices the shift and looks toward the others. Gil struggles to speak, his reaction slow, but he eventually forces out that killing someone bound and helpless feels closer to execution than battle. Bison shuts that down immediately. She rejects the hesitation and reminds him how easily they could have died if things had gone differently. To her, there is no room for sympathy. The man was a killer, and nothing done to him could repay what he had done. Even a worse fate would not balance the lives he took. While the argument fades, Turan turns away and begins searching the area. He moves through the room until something catches his eye. A book lies on the ground. He picks it up and starts going through it. Inside, he finds a map. The marked points match the destroyed villages exactly. It confirms everything. As he continues reading, something else stands out. The formulas written inside are strange, unlike anything he has seen before. The thought crosses his mind that these may have been taught to the man by whatever he called God. He remains focused on the pages until Bison calls out to him. She pushes the group to begin absorbing mana and suggests they report the outcome once they are done. Soon, everyone starts using their own methods to draw in mana. The scene shifts. An official presents a reward for the defeat of the arsonist. He praises Bison, calling her a rising figure of House Carmen. She accepts the reward without interest in the praise, brushing it aside. She then turns to Turan. Her group plans to continue hunting demonic beasts, and she asks about his next move, noting that he already received his share. Turan answers without pause. His destination is Abacha. Bison steps closer and lowers her voice. She warns him not to repeat what the arsonist claimed. Turan agrees, understanding the risk. Knowledge like that could throw everything into chaos. With that settled, Bison nods and leads her group away. They part ways without looking back. Turan watches them go and decides to keep his thoughts to himself. Without proof, there is no reason to spread doubt. He continues alone, moving across a barren desert where no one else can be seen. As time passes, something begins to change. He slows down, sensing it. The air feels different. He focuses and realizes the humidity is rising with every step. He snaps his fingers, testing his magic. The result is clear. A small flame appears, weaker than before, and it takes more effort to maintain. Fire magic is losing its edge here. In his other hand, water gathers easily, forming a large sphere without resistance. The conclusion is simple. Fire weakens, water strengthens. That can only mean one thing. He looks ahead and spots a distant shimmer. Water. He heads straight for it. After some time, the landscape shifts into a port town. Ships line the docks, confirming his arrival. This is Abacha. Inside the city, a group of sailors talk among themselves. One asks if they are leaving the next day. The captain, marked by an eye patch, confirms it. Their route leads back to the inner desert, but the journey is far from safe. He complains about mermen attacking their ships, throwing harpoons and damaging the hull. Another questions how bad things really are. An older sailor adds that pirates are just as dangerous. The captain lets out a frustrated groan. At this rate, they are spending more on funerals than wages. What they need is clear: someone strong enough to protect the ship. At that moment, Turan steps up to the table and stops in front of the group. He asks if they are heading to the inner world desert. The captain looks up and answers in a blunt tone. The ship leaves the next day, but it is no place for passengers. Anyone wanting a ride would have to give up a barrel of alcohol. Turan does not react. He calmly places his hand over a cup sitting on the table. The captain questions the move, but the words die off as the cup freezes solid in an instant. Ice locks around it completely. The mood shifts fast. The captain stiffens, clearly shaken by the display. The other men rise from their seats, their tone turning respectful as they question why someone of his level is in a place like this. Turan dismisses the change and makes it clear he is not here for status. He is looking for work. The captain's attitude flips just as quickly. He asks what the knight wants. Turan states his goal directly. He needs to reach the inner world desert, not as a passenger, but as hired help. In return, he offers protection. Any mermen or pirates that attack the ship will be dealt with by him. That will be his payment. The captain understands immediately. Turan heard everything. Still, he hesitates. The ship is in poor shape. There is no proper room, no real wage for someone like him. Turan cuts through that concern. Payment and comfort do not matter. His only objective is reaching enroll. That answer hits hard. The captain pauses, surprised by the resolve, then accepts. The deal is made on the spot. Turan joins the crew. The scene shifts. A different place falls into chaos. Flames consume multiple houses as dark elves launch a sudden and violent assault. Soldiers struggle to hold their ground, barely keeping the attackers back. One soldier faces a charging dark elf and manages to cut it down. There is no time to breathe. Another rushes him and he kills that one too. He keeps fighting, taking down enemy after enemy, but they do not stop coming. The numbers keep growing. He realizes the truth. At this pace, he cannot hold out. As another enemy closes in to strike, the sky erupts. Golden lightning crashes down, tearing through the battlefield. Every monster in the area is wiped out in an instant. The soldier looks up, stunned. Above him, Mesa hovers in the air, her presence overwhelming. Relief hits him hard. He expresses it quickly, but she stays focused. She sends him back to his unit without delay. He follows the order and runs straight back into the fight. Another figure approaches her midair. Kadram Arabian, vice commander of the Arabian subjugation force, moves in and checks her condition, asking if she has been injured. She shows no concern for herself. He warns her not to push too far, pointing out that her life carries more weight than a few battles. She ignores that and demands a report instead. Kadram answers, "The situation is under control. They will reclaim the area soon. The only problem left is locating the enemy tunnels." Mesa makes her intent clear. The moment those tunnels are found, she will enter them herself. With that, she leaves without another word, flying off. Kadram watches her go, irritation clear. He clicks his tongue and mutters under his breath, blaming his brother for raising her that way. He sees her as reckless, spoiled, and heading toward the same end as her family. The scene shifts again. Turan stands on the ship facing the open sea. The ocean stretches endlessly ahead as he watches in silence. Turan stands at the edge of the ship, his gaze fixed on the endless ocean as his thoughts drift. Even if he reaches the lands of Zahar, he has no clear path forward. Charging in blindly would be reckless. He does not even know his father's name or status. All he has is a portrait of his mother and a few belongings she left behind. Finding the truth could take far longer than he wants. His thoughts break when the one-eyed captain taps his shoulder. The man jokes that staring like that might dry up the sea and asks what is weighing on his mind. Turan answers simply, saying he was thinking about how vast the ocean is. The captain agrees without hesitation, adding that even sailors grow tired of the view after enough time. He asks if Turan is handling seasickness, but Turan shows no trouble. The captain mentions hearing that Turan has been learning from the bosun, picking up skills from tying knots to working the sails. The man found it amusing, even exciting, to teach a knight such work. Turan admits he wanted to learn and found the experience more enjoyable than expected. Their talk is cut short when a crew member calls out that food is ready. The captain gathers everyone, sending them toward the mess hall. During the meal, an old sailor comments that the food cannot compare to what they would eat on land, but at least they have sauerkraut. He explains its importance, saying that without it, they would suffer from a deadly gum disease. He describes how gums begin to bleed until death follows, but sour foods can prevent it. Sauerkraut works best since fruit spoils too quickly at sea. Turan listens with interest and asks how such knowledge was discovered. The old man shrugs it off, saying the information spread over time. Before that, sailors tried anything, even eating raw mermaids in desperation. That detail catches Turan off guard. The moment settles until a lookout shouts from above. A mid-sized ship appears ahead, positioned off to the side. Someone asks if it belongs to pirates. The lookout cannot confirm, but there is no crest flying from its mast. The old man mutters that the calm weather was suspicious and assumes the worst. Pirates! The captain wastes no time. He orders everyone to prepare for battle. The crew moves fast, grabbing weapons from storage. The old man approaches the captain, asking for a plan and suggesting retreat, but the captain points out the obvious. The enemy ship is faster. Running will only delay the inevitable. The captain turns to Turan, weighing the situation, and asks if he can handle it. Turan answers without hesitation. As long as there are no nobles or knights among them, it will not be an issue. That is enough. The captain gives the order to turn the ship and face the enemy head-on. The crew erupts, shouting with renewed confidence. The ships close the distance quickly. On the opposing deck, pirates stand ready, armed and shouting. They call out, demanding surrender, claiming they will spare lives if the crew gives in. Turan considers it for a moment. The old man cuts through the idea, asking if being thrown overboard after having their legs cut off counts as mercy. That settles it. The truth is exactly what Turan expected. He moves first. With a powerful leap, he crosses the gap and lands on the pirate ship alone. The enemies freeze for a second, caught off guard by the bold move. They shout, demanding to know who he is. Turan does not answer. He draws water straight from the sea with his magic, shaping it into sharp ice. The pirates rush him, but they are too slow. The attack comes down in a storm. Ice shards shoot forward, tearing through bodies and dropping men where they stand. Screams fill the deck as chaos spreads. Turan locks eyes with those still standing. There is no hesitation left, no reason to hold back. Mana surges from him, heavy and threatening, pressing down on everyone who remains. Only bodies and frightened people remain. But the captain shouts, "Don't be scared, you punks! If we don't kill him, we're the ones who'll die anyway." Everyone rushes against Turan, but with a cold and blue gaze, as if it were the sea itself in his eyes. The water around begins to take shape, and quickly Turan creates an ice sword, which he uses to defeat the first enemy with a precise strike. Don't let up. Keep attacking. They try to attack at the same time, but the protagonist easily blocks, disarming both of them. He uses magic to increase his speed and in milliseconds strikes both of them at the same time. Another pirate tries to make a surprise attack, but Turan notices and cuts him in half. At the same time, he grabs the spear and already strikes another pirate in the middle of the chest. Another wave of pirates try to hit the protagonist. However, he alters the anatomy of the sword, making it more liquid and increasing its reach, thus cutting 4 enemies at the same time. A pirate who was supposedly dead stands up and makes a surprise attack, trying to restrain Turan. There, now's the chance. Kill him. But something shocks the supposed dead man. The knife did not go through, and we only see Turan's anger. None of the attacks hurt him, the blades not going in. And with that, Turan begins the massacre, dismembering the enemies in front of him, beheading all of them. It is a true rain of blood on that boat, in which only Turan remained. With a frightening expression, not even looking like a mage anymore, after all the disaster, the sound of hooks is heard, and Turan's allies finally arrive. Surprised after all, he really wiped them all out. The captain jokes, asking if does he happen to work as a cleaner on the side. If he does this impeccable cleaning, our team will have nothing left to do. The others celebrate. That was truly amazing. Long live the knight. Woo. You bastards. Serves you right. But Sir Knight, how about going to see the physician first? But with a smile on his face, Turan informs, no need to worry. He's not hurt anywhere. This is all the pirate's blood. What an aura. A moment later, the captain called Turan. He has searched every nook and cranny of those guys' ships. It turns out that ship was a merchant vessel that went missing in Abacha a few years ago. It seems the pirates captured it, gave it a new coat of paint, and used it themselves. It's just like those lowlifes to do that. Then he questions Turan what he intends to do. After all, he was the one who eliminated all the enemies fighting alone. The ownership of that item belongs entirely to him. Congratulations, he has become a new ship owner, which ends up surprising Turan. What is usually done in this case? Well, there are several ways. He could take it back to Abacha and say, "Original owner, I found it," then bow his head while asking for a reward. Of course, between the paperwork and catering to the bureaucrats, a month or two will fly by. Another way is to go to the Emerald Desert and sell it, but in his opinion, it's best to just sell it at the northern sea islands along our way. That neighborhood is always desperate for ships. The rule is to sell to the one who needs it to get the highest price. However, to move a ship of that size, we'll need to mobilize quite a few of his crewmen. It's not like he can sail that ship all by himself anyway. If he uses people, he should pay the price. Turan laughs. The captain is someone who understands. In that case, as a service fee for his boys, if he could give us 10% of the profit. Turan makes a counter-negotiation. Could Turan ask him to handle everything up to the sale for 20%? The captain accepts the proposal with a big smile. He knows quite a few people over there, so he will make sure we get a very good price. Suddenly a man enters the room shouting, "Captain, a mermaid, it's a mermaid," he is surprised. What? Now even mermaids are attacking us. No, that's not it. The pirates were keeping a mermaid captive, under the deck. They walked to the place. So there's an important guest on board. Yes, he haven't gone in yet either, he just received the report. Good job, Turan. Would he likes to go see the important guest? Sure. By the way, do mermaids sell for a high price? Ah, if it's a pretty female mermaid. Those rich lords on the mainland who have nothing but money and bones can't get enough of mysterious things. They go absolutely crazy for them. It's this way. Upon entering the underdeck, disappointment comes. It's a shame, but it's a male. This one will go for a pittance. Those rich lords have no interest in male mermaids. Well, unless it's a legendary royal who can transform into a fish. But the fish becomes enraged. How insolent. Male, he says. He is our Mani, the 47th Prince of North Estadale. Show some respect, you lowly humans of the land. Is he saying he's royalty? It seems so. Maybe he thinks that's the only way we'll keep him alive and sell him, so he might just be bluffing. So can he transform into a fish? Mermaid Prince. But he says he cannot. Then Captain asks why. That's because he is being restrained like this and out of water. He must enter the sea in a perfect state to be able to transform. But both look at each other and come to the conclusion that probably he's playing tricks to try and escape. Then the captain asks what Turan is going to do. He asks if the rumor that mermaids eat humans with a certain frequency is true, and the captain confirms that it is. Then Turan will kill him, since he's not worth any money anyway. It would be a jackpot if what he said was true. But, well, if we believe him and release him into the sea and he just runs away, we will just look like fools. With a sinister look, Turan extends his hand and begins to channel magic. But the fish begs him to stop. He has never eaten a human in his life. He never even intended to. But Turan's eyes remain aggressive, making the small fish tremble in fear. If he spare him, he will give you a treasure. A treasure. What did you mean by a treasure? Yes, a treasure. The things left behind by the Freyan gods you worship. After a while, the end of the afternoon arrives and the sunset appears on the coast. Everyone is happy, after all, they came back alive. Let's have a real drink today. So, have you reached a conclusion? Yes. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to be very far from here, so he will try to head there and come back tonight. Turan takes a small boat along with the mermaid. What are these chains for? Does Turan think he will run away? I am a prince. He keeps his promises. You will really let me go if the treasure is actually there, right? Yes, don't worry about that. Don't blame me if he's disappointed when he sees it. Since it's Freyan treasure, it's only counted as amazing by the standards of you land people. He understood, so just lead the way. They sail for a long time after all. The moon is the only light in the vast ocean, until they finally arrive at the place. Turan dives deeply, until he finds something. A tremendous snake, on top of a rock as if it were protecting something.